Big Show with Czek and Iain Burns.
Good morning, I'm Czek, with me Iain Burns, and there's that old saying, feet don't fail me now, and I'm going to say that voice, don't fail me now. So we kick off the show here as I'm fighting the end of this bug here, but Iain's going to do most of the talking today, so we're going to fight through it, but kind of got like a Stevie Nicks thing going on, I think. Maybe I should start singing.
Bob Dylan?
Bob Dylan, yeah, there you go. Actually, when I was interviewing John Carpe yesterday, I think I really lost it yesterday. So I had to cut the interview short because I couldn't even get out the last couple of questions. How are you doing this morning out there in the nation's capital?
I'm doing a lot better than you, mate. But, it's the weather's poo here. It's very, very bad. It's not like a nice day in May. So at least Kelowna has that. You've got that going for you.
Well, we got a beautiful backdrop there. That's our live shot here from our office here. As you can see, the traffic flowing in behind me. Our headline this morning, though. Here we go. I got some tea and honey here, too, so to kind of help me get through this. Canada's decline, intentional or due to incompetence? A decade of policy failure. That's what it really amounts to, right? A decade of policy failure that has left Canada poor. We have 10% of the population now below the poverty line. And we have record numbers in food bank lineups. And our GDP per capita is at a complete disconnect from the United States of America. I mean, they're close to double what ours is right now. It's absolutely crazy. The leading indicators point to economic decline here, economic winter, where the opposite is true for the United States of America. Investment flows into the United States, including the Prime Minister himself has invested much of his wealth into the United States of America, while Canada gets left behind. And a lot of it is to do with corruption, incompetence, failed ideologies, failed policies, division, divisiveness. It's just, some people have called it, I think when we had Catherine Swift on, she almost said it's intentional. Like this stuff is intentional. Like a blind cat couldn't have messed it up this badly.
I don't know, I must admit, I know people seem to think I'm silly for this, but I'm still holding out for incompetence. That's my dream. That's my moonshot.
But is it
actually just incompetent?
But even if you take your thing, incompetence, is it still intentional because the people in power, like Mark Carney is not incompetent. There's no doubt about it. So, but he allows incompetent people to sit in cabinet. Like he allows Lena Diab, he allows Gary, Melanie Jolie, who could be one of the most incompetent, cost us the most, you talked about it yesterday, the most in trade. He allows her to continue there. Stephen Guilbeault, like all of these people are still there. Steve McKinnon, Mark Miller, one of the more sinister ones of the bunch there. So if you're the leader, you get to make the decisions, because it comes down to Mark Carney making the decision, isn't it? Like he can decide tomorrow if these incompetent ministers retain their post or they're kicked out. So,
well, I would say Mark Carney's obviously competent enough to get himself into very prestigious jobs and institutions when he was a younger lad. He's very good at networking, and it has to be the case that he was good at some element of finance, because he worked at Goldman Sachs for something like 13 years. Usually, to work at a place like that, you do have to be competent. But all of those things don't add up to being a competent leader of a country of over 40 million people. You know what I mean? Like that's a very different responsibility. And a lot is made of his competence, his supposed competence, and his acumen, his ability. But I don't think I've seen competence yet in this role. I don't know if he is a competent Prime Minister. Maybe he's a competent Bank of Canada governor. Lots of people would make that claim. I wouldn't say that about his job at the Bank of England. Very good at making a noise and getting attention. Very good at networking, yeah. But I don't know. To be the leader of a country, here we are. Like, what are we? How many minutes in? 5 minutes in? I'm going to mention values, right? This is every episode guaranteed. 100% guarantee. In Values, Mark Carney has a whole section on leadership where he talks about all the different kind of leaders for different situations and stuff like that. Maybe take his own advice. He, from my, from what I've seen so far in this limited amount of time that we've had to see him as Prime Minister, I don't see him as particularly competent as Prime Minister. I would say that, and I think maybe that'll change. But we talk about this every day. We just don't say it explicitly, but we talk about how nothing is being done. That's if you were competent as Prime Minister, things would be being done.
Well, I've got a clip here from Larry Fink from BlackRock, the CEO of BlackRock here, and he lays out what the future looks like. This is what the next 10, 15, 20 years looks like. This is where we should be focusing our attention. There's no doubt about it. There's no question about it. This is it. This is it. This is, back in the 60s, there was a guy that, I remember a movie, it said, he gave a hint to this young man. He said, plastics, man, plastics. It's all about plastics. And, like when you have these generational changes and stuff like that, and the internet was a big boom, right? And right now, this is it. Listen to the three things that are so important to the world right now.
The United States is short power, we're short compute, we're short chips, and there are going to be shortages in all three. And memory, four things. I actually believe a new asset class will be buying futures of compute. We just don't have compute power right now.
Energy. Really, it comes down to energy. Data centers, the power, like the power to do all this stuff, and the chips, obviously. Mark Carney says we have all the chips, so we must be set with chips. But we do have the energy. We don't have the chips unless they're, again, old Dutch or Nallies, but we don't have the chips. The Americans are working hard at. TerraFab is one of those such projects. Intel stock shooting to the moon. AMD took off, I think, today. The chip makers are starting to take on. Taiwan Semiconductor. It's about chips, compute. And, and Elon Musk said they're going to build data centers in space too. But we're sitting on these huge opportunities here in Canada and Alberta. I've been talking about this for a year and a half. Alberta is the Saudi Arabia of modern times in that it has almost every form of energy when you combine Alberta and Saskatchewan, from nuclear to oil and gas, like into LNG and to wind and solar, because they're also the best spots in Canada for wind and so geothermal, and then even like anything, even the canola stuff, like the agricultural gas. It just has so much energy potential, and it also has one of the biggest things going for it. It has the cold north to go with it as well, because you can put data centers in the north, because one of the biggest things they have to deal with is the heat generated by these computers. And northern Alberta, northern Saskatchewan offer a lot of cold weather. I've lived up there in high level, Fort Vermilion. So Thompson, Manitoba, like the cold north, you can go further into the territories. So the opportunities are here. Will we seize them, I guess, is the question.
Again, how would you review the leader of a country that failed to take advantage of opportunities that obvious and that massive? What would you describe that person as? I think incompetent could be a word, could be an accurate word to use. So we'll see. But he doesn't. Mr. Carney does not seem to be particularly interested in this area. He's a lot more interested in the new industry of carbon capture, which is quite literally like a sink for money sink.
A tax grift. That's nothing other than, like what we said. Our show yesterday was on strangulation by regulation, a tax grift, and that's what we're going to show you a lot of that pushback coming on this tax grift. But one of the big policy failures of the past decade here in Canada has been this EV mandate, this push for EVs, and then billions of dollars absolutely flushed down the drain by Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. And we ought to credit Mark Carney because he was the economic advisor for Justin Trudeau for 5 years. So, and we know that Justin Trudeau had no idea what the economy was because he said budgets balance themselves and he doesn't even worry about it. His words, not mine, his words, right? I don't worry about the economy.
Carney also pushed very aggressively and very enthusiastically EVs, which is what this is about. This is about people like Mark Carney pushing EVs when the population is nowhere near as interested in them as people like that assumed they would be. They weren't willing to be force-fed EVs. So that's another aspect of responsibility on Mark Carney's part.
Honda announced this, I think, earlier that they were going to delay this plant, but now it's set to freeze its plans to build a $15 billion EV plant in Canada, despite generous subsidies from the taxpayers. Nikkei Asia said that scrapping the Ontario project entirely is on the table, but for now, Japan car maker has decided to indefinitely suspend it. The report claims sluggish U.S. demand for the EVs has brought about the move, and Honda choosing to focus on hybrids instead of fully electric. It adds that stalled trade negotiation between Washington and Ottawa have added to the uncertainty. This is the key point here that they're making. Honda and Toyota, like Jolie said, they count for 70% of manufacturing here. They will not make cars in Canada if they cannot sell to the United States of America, because that's the market. And Mark Carney and Melanie Jolie ignore that, and they say, well, they'll make the cars here and we'll sell them to the world. Who's going to buy them? Who's going to buy? Because Japan's not buying them back, are they? And they already make cars in Europe, so they're not going to buy them there. So where do they plan on selling these cars, if not to the United States of America? And they clearly laid it out. Like and the Japan ambassador said it earlier. I think it was on CTV. He said, if you don't have a Kuzma deal, we don't have a use to be here. Like we need the U.S. market. But they don't get the message. They clearly don't understand the message. And then yesterday when we did that story, we highlighted that Melanie Jolie may have been the reason that Kuzma fell apart. Melanie Jolie, Francois Philippe Champagne, and Mark Carney, obviously, because he's the boss, because he could have reined them in at any time. But we want to take you back. We want to throw you back to when two other fools stepped up to the microphone and listened to their foolish rhetoric and how it aged like a rotten bowl of milk.
When we're looking at the Honda EV battery plant, how many jobs directly in the plant will be created, and how much is the government paying for each of those jobs through the tax credits and the deal that is on the table?
There is a debate ongoing in politics right now, and the Conservative Party of Canada would have us not make this investment today. They stood against our Volkswagen investment in St. Thomas, Ontario. They decried the investment that we made with Stellantis in Windsor, and they continue to be against government stepping up to invest in good jobs of the future. It's a legitimate debate, but I think they're wrong. As the world is turning towards new ways of manufacturing cleaner products, cleaner vehicles, changing the way we build things, changing what we build, countries around the world are competing for investments. And we know that an investment today in Honda as they build new facilities, new plants that are going to employ 1,000 new workers, that's not just creating jobs, great jobs for 1,000 new people around here. That's contributing to an ecosystem that'll involve parts suppliers. It'll involve communities with vibrant art scenes and strong main streets. It'll involve future generations of Canada building the kinds of solutions the world needs. Yes, there are politicians who sit back and say, no. We've got to balance the budget at all costs, even if it means not investing in Canadian workers and investing in the future. Well, I think they're wrong. And that's part of the choice Canadians get to make over the coming year and a half.
So all you had to do back then is sit there and nod your head and make surly faces there as Christina Freeland in the background there. And you get yourself a job in Ukraine there managing, $25 billion of Canadian taxpayer dollars with no oversight.
Oh, she's just another complete failure, isn't she? Talking about competence or incompetence. What has she ever achieved?
Well,
Again, it's like the things that she's achieved are she's got herself prestigious jobs. Congratulations. But I mean, it's one thing to get them. You got to do something when you are given those jobs. She's done nothing but fail. All she's ever done is fail. At least in government. She would probably say that she was a successful journalist. I don't know about that. But in government, all she ever did was fail. But I just want to talk about Trudeau there. So he's asked an unusually precise question. Completely refused to answer it. Again, I don't know how many times I can say this before I get sick of hearing it myself, but these people just spit in your face almost every single day. They just spit on Canadian democracy and they spit in your face as the Canadian voter. He was asked a precise question and he delivered a sort of mediocre soliloquy about nothing, as usual. Just like almost like an audition for a role or something, for a stage play, wasn't it? Just awful. And his successor, which is probably more relevant nowadays, his successor does the same thing. But also he said at the start that he said the Conservatives would not fund. And he talked about this one and then some other thing. Okay, here we are a couple of years down the line. Turns out the Conservatives were right. The Conservatives were right. The Liberals were wrong. What have the consequences been for the Liberal Party, which remains in government? Can anyone tell me? What have the consequences been? They were wrong. The Conservatives were right on this occasion. I'm not trying to make this into a partisan thing. Have the Conservatives been rewarded for being right? Have the Liberals been punished? As far as I see it, no. This is just gone. It's forgotten. It's in the wind. So then you might ask yourself, what are the consequences to being a very confident liar? Or just being very confidently wrong and very confidently incompetent? What are the consequences in this country if you're any of those things? The answer, if this is anything to go by, is there are no consequences. It's fine. You can be totally incompetent. You can lie. You can deceive. Your opponents can be right, proved right, vindicated in their positions. And it doesn't matter. There are no consequences. Again, I refer you back to our previous conversations about sort of the health of democracy in this country. Is this a democracy? Are we actually in a democracy?
Well, the cute little trick they played is they crippled and corrupted media and have the media not only protecting them as a shield, but also acting as a spear to attack and deflect onto the Conservatives. They attack them all the time and deflect, and they find straw men all the time. And this is an absolute failure. And here's the result of this failure. Here we have billions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, that have gone poof into the air. And we're talking about, there's so many EV projects, Lionor, the buses, all kinds of them have just absolutely failed here in Canada. Billions of dollars. And where is investment going right now? Because the United States of America has changed its EV mandate. Well, they dropped the EV mandate. They killed the EV mandate. They've also curtailed some of the tailpipe emissions. So what's happening in the United States of America? Remember, legacy automakers do not make money selling EVs. Well, there's only one company that makes money selling EVs, and that's including the Chinese, and that's Tesla. Honda, investing $9.6 billion in the United States. Toyota, $10 billion. Stellantis, taking the $12 billion that they got from Canada, investing in the United States, $13 billion. GM, $6 billion. And then what we talked about yesterday, Melanie Jolie, because of this EV mandate and maybe the Montreal connections and Montreal pressure, or whatever you want to call it, they continued to push this EV mandate. And that even goes back to Chrystia Freeland when she would go into the meetings with the 6 Canadian CEOs from the legacy automakers. And it come out of the meeting saying they love the EV mandate. They want it. And the CEOs would come out and say, we've got to kill the EV mandate. Doug Ford, just nothing, right? Doug Ford,
Yeah.
just nothing. Nothing out of Doug, right? 500,000 jobs rely on the auto sector in Canada. And the Liberals failed ideology. And again, I'm not against EVs. I think Tesla's the best car on this planet. And I drive one, been driving one for 3 years. But that doesn't change the fact that people get the right to choose. And there's some areas of this nation, most areas of this nation, where EVs just don't work, and they don't substitute for the big trucks, and they don't substitute for a lot of people's lives, like in the pickup trucks and the expenses and all kinds of different things. It just is not a one size fits all. So people will make the switch when it's cheaper, better, and faster. When it's cheaper, better, and faster. And right now, the Teslas that are being offered in Canada, like for the right person at $39,000, it fits the bill of cheaper, better, faster. But that is for a small segment of what's going on.
Cracking deal, that though, isn't it? But yeah, definitely, you're still not going to persuade everybody, even with that sort of a deal.
No.
But maybe if the oil crisis is as bad as people think, perhaps. But I just want to say, you mentioned Jolie, just before I forget. So Jolie, we heard yesterday, allegedly torpedoed the CUSMA deal that was just about to be signed, pretty much, and she torpedoed it in the name of cars, the auto industry. And now we see that, partly because of the fact that she torpedoed that deal, we could end up with a situation where we have no CUSMA and we have no car industry. What's, again, talking about consequences of a failure? I don't know. I implore people, read about 19th century and 18th century, just British history. That's probably the easiest one with the most sources. Read about what happened to people, ministers, representatives of the government. Read about what happened to them when they failed this badly. They were imprisoned in many cases. They lost everything. They were disgraced. They lost their money, and they were criminally prosecuted. What's going to happen to Jolie? I mean, I would say she's just going to fail upwards, just like Chrystia Freeland and the rest of them. She'll get a nice cushy job somewhere, and she'll trade in on her contacts. But I'd also, just one thing that we didn't mention that I didn't put in that little thing about the Honda, like from Nikkei in that article about Honda withdrawing from Ontario. It makes clear that this is really about the US. This is like a kind of establishment of the hierarchy, because it even says in this article, while much of the world is, increasingly turning to EVs. EVs are very popular around the world, and it lists all the percentages of sales around the world. In the United States, that has not been the case. And because of that, one country on this planet is not so keen on EVs. Therefore, Honda has to pull its hair out and change its entire industrial strategy because of this one country. Just an indication of how important the United States is. It is the top dog. It is top of the food chain. If the Americans decide that they're not particularly keen on EVs, companies in Japan, companies in Europe, everywhere on the planet have to change their strategies if they want to continue to make money. But apparently, then this is the context in which Jolie says the ridiculous things that she says about the United States. I just feel like this is America. If you read this article, this is America showing that it's the T-Rex. It is the king of the jungle. And you, to a certain extent, if you want to get by in this world in a commercial sense, or even in a security or diplomatic sense, you kind of have to work with America, not against it.
Thank you to Boy for the contribution, and also to R.C. Lamoureux for the contribution to independent media. We appreciate that very, very much as we fight for truth every day. But what Ian says there on America, it's the arrogance of the Liberals, arrogance of Melanie Jolie, to think that they can just will it into fruition that Canada is more important than the United States. So we'll make the cars for ourselves. We'll make the best auto sector. We're going to build cars for the future. It's just liberal nonsense. Look at the past. Look at the past to see the future. Look at their past to see their future. They have nothing but failure after failure after failure, because I do not know one thing you can point to in the last decade that you would call a screaming success. And they will point to literally the legalization of pot, and I can show you a lot of failures along the way for the legalization of pot as well, and the effects that it has on young people, especially young males here in Canada. And also in their run-up in the stock thing, it was a pump and dump in the stock thing, and it was also a pump and dump in all the stores that got launched. Like there was almost a pot store every couple blocks, and many of them are out of business now too. Again, it is failure after failure after failure. And their climate pillar, where they did the EV mandate, then also all the oil and gas suppression, and then all the mineral suppression, like all the suppression throughout their policies have stagnated Canada into like an economic winter when it should be like it should be like the summer of fun for Canada. And right now it's like an economic blizzard almost compared to what it should be. And here's Mark Carney asked about this recent Honda setback.
Prime Minister, some good news in Mirabel, I gather today later.
What's that, sorry?
Some good news in Mirabel later today. I don't want to scoop you, but there's a lot of concern in the auto sector.
Yeah, we've still got, obviously there's challenges with the U.S. tariffs, unjustified tariffs in the auto sector. We continue to work with companies in the sector, helping them reposition, reinvest, supporting workers there. We'll continue to do what's necessary, including getting the right deal that's in Canada's interest.
You worried about Honda?
What kind of leader in a moment like this when 500,000 jobs are on the line walks up the stairs, basically says a talking point, a nonsense talking point, and then walks away and then calls that a democratic process? And then they make fun of Trump and call him undemocratic and a king and all this stuff, when he would literally have stood there probably for 20 minutes and answered questions from almost anybody. And those are the facts. Those are the absolute facts. Donald Trump will take questions all the time because he's not scared of what his policies are, and he owns up to his policies. This guy does not, because what he should say is, we're wrong on the EV mandate. We're absolutely wrong. We wasted the Canadian taxpayer dollars, and we're going to come up with a better path forward. But no, he doesn't even acknowledge that they're wrong, and he blames it on unjust tariffs. Why not blame it on the real problems, the hauteur of a few cabinet ministers and your failed EV ideology?
And yeah, I don't know if you listened to him yesterday when he was introducing the, the new Governor General, but most of his speech, and hers actually, but most of his speech was about democracy, freedom of expression, freedom of the press, how crucial it is to have pressure put on institutions so that they behave themselves, scrutiny. It was all about the things that don't exist in Canada. Yes. So increasingly, we are just sort of like the Soviet Union or something like that, aren't we? We're increasingly living in like a Soviet world where the leadership class get up and they talk about a country that doesn't exist. It's a fantasy. And there's the evidence, there's the reality. The man is asked questions by the press after a very consequential bit of news, and he just has nothing at all to say. Like runs away from them, basically.
The EV plan has completely failed here in Canada. And they keep talking about, what did he say just recently? The future is connected and electric or something like that. And it's obviously not. It's obviously not here in Canada, unless we want to import some Uyghurs in here and not pay them. And because none of the Chinese EV makers make a profit either. There's a lot of support there to destroy auto sectors. And the auto sectors know this, right? And Japan knows this too. And we rely on the Japanese automakers to make 70% of the autos here in Canada. And you're going to chase them all south, right? And this is you don't even they won't even answer questions. Like what he did right there clearly demonstrates his contempt for you, the taxpayer, and for democracy in itself. I mean, what you're talking about yesterday, you need a rag to wipe the spit off your face, because he just spits in the face of democracy. And we're going to show you a lot more receipts of that later in the show here. And we were going to have Harman Bangu on here at noon, MLA here in British Columbia here, to talk about a whole bunch of contentious issues here. But he just texted me and said that he's got a raspy voice and he's going to delay it till tomorrow. And I can understand that. We're soldiering on here. And here's,
everybody's got this, haven't they? I must say, it's really. I can't remember this level of penetration, as Klaus Schwab would say, in the population.
penetration of the cabinet is unprecedented.
It's
The
the new
globalists.
cold order, isn't it?
The elitists, the globalists are the problem, and Canada has a direct link to the globalists and the WEF. And Mark Carney was one of the founders of the WEF, but the media doesn't cover that either. The media that he allows them to talk to him. Because look at it, he walks up there. The media is just scrambling, you know what I mean? Like just begging to ask a question. And then if they dare ask a question, then maybe it's out of line. They don't even get to stand in that hallway, the hallowed hallway anymore. Here's Francois, one of the best gaslighters in Canada. If gaslighting was energy, we would be leaders by far, but here's one of the best gaslighters in Canada.
Electric vehicle is still the North Star. Now, when you change technology after a century, is it history teach us that, you know, the habits of consumer, the technology and what's happening in the world has been delaying that. This is not uniquely Canadian. This is, you see all across the world, is that there seems to be a delay. Is that totally surprising? I'd say, you know, it took Tesla 17 years to be profitable. Henry Ford with Model T was not a success when it started. So what I see just a shift. But we have the infrastructure. I mean, if you look at some of the international press, they would say, we still have, in my view, we have created the foundation to make sure that we would be a leader in electric vehicle. Now, is the market changing? Is it going to take a bit more time? Is it something that you see when you do the same thing for a century and you switch? I would say history teaches us that you have adjustment at the beginning. Electric vehicle is still the North.
That's good. Where's the foundation? Can you tell me where the foundation? Because I'm pretty sure that was Rosemary Barton's voice on the other side of that. What foundation? Because he won't even talk. That's the first time I've actually heard him speak of Tesla, because they need to use it as an example, because it is the only electric EV maker that makes a profit. But Tesla is much more than a car company. If anybody understands, I mean, I'm pretty deep into Tesla. Tesla is not a car company. Tesla is not a car company. Tesla is a technology company. Tesla is a technology company. They do a lot more than cars. They do energy. They do chips. They do robots. They do everything. They are a technology company. Cars are just one of the things they happen to make.
Yeah, and they're part of like the Silicon Valley world, aren't they? Even though they're in Texas now, it's not the same at all. But what I was thinking there, I'd take it even further back and look at it in a more sort of zoomed out way. He talked about Tesla and he talked about Ford, as in Henry Ford. He was talking about the Model T there, wasn't he? And he's saying, oh, you know, it takes a while for these things to adjust, you know, for the market to adjust, and then you know, people will start taking them on. But we've built the foundations. We're ready. We're like, everything's good. You talk about two private companies operating in the market, and you're right, Francois Philippe. Yeah, sometimes it does take a while for the market to adjust and all that kind of thing. However, what's that got to do with you? You're the finance minister for a government. You're not in a private company. So why has he decided to stump up Canadian taxpayers' cash, rejig, recraft Canada's industrial strategy, such as it is, around this gamble that's been taken by private companies? What the hell has he brought us along on that ride for? Why is he taking our money on that ride, on that private company gamble? When Henry Ford did create the Model T, that was a private company taking a gamble. It was like, yeah, I'll do this. You can have any color as long as it's black. We're going to do assembly lines, etc., etc., etc. Every worker can have a car. That was a gamble, paid off magnificently for old Ford, didn't it? And it looks like Tesla has been a magnificent success for Elon Musk as well. But they were both gambles. Now, what is the government of Canada doing, getting involved in that kind of thing? And fiddling around with the market, messing around with regulations and things like that to make it punitive for the consumer to buy gas cars. Why the hell are they doing that? Like, what makes them think that they're qualified to follow in the footsteps of Ford and Musk there and sort of take part in the construction of a new sort of type of car, a new car industry or something? Like, what the hell are they doing, man? What the hell? This mediocre little man? Does he think that he's Henry Ford? Does he think that he could tie his shoelaces? No wonder it's all gone tits up. You know what I mean?
And Canada does not have an EV or any automaker of its own. Like the only one I can think of is the Bricklin. That was made in like a Newfoundland, St. John's, I believe, and they only made like 3,000, I believe. The Bricklin, and the guy ended up in California, and I think he ended his career on a bunch of white powder. But I mean, the Bricklin was a cool car, but it was like basically a Frankenstein car that had a Ford engine in it. But there is no automaker, and they should let the capitalist system figure it out. Like, people don't invest like building a car thing because it's expensive. I remember Evan Solomon early on when he got his job as the AI cabinet minister there. He was in some Montreal, I think Montreal University, and they had spent $5 million building a prototype of an electric car, and they said they needed another. I can't remember getting these numbers wrong. 20 million to build 3 more of these, and then, he said this is the future of Canada's automakers. Just like, you're a clown. You're a bloody clown. Yeah, the Bricklin had the 351 Cleveland in it. That's correct. Thanks for Darren for that. But yeah, had cool doors too. But
Very cool. Bit awkward though, weren't they?
anyway, good for a movie, Back to the Future, with Canadian Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
This is what was going to be the lead today, because we talked about Fatty yesterday, the IEA chief. I called him Faith, but I think his name is Fatty. Fatty says that Canada needs to get off its hiney and get some energy to the markets. And Tim said that's the plan. I think I responded to Tim on X. You can go find it there. What's the plan, Tim? Really, what is the plan? 14 months later, nobody knows what the plan is. And I don't think you know what the plan is, because the easy plan is unleash the beast. That's the next 3 words instead of that's the plan, unleash the beast. But you have every chain and shackle tied to this beast, and the only person with the key to it that you give him with C5 is Mark Carney has the key to all the shackles, but you just add more shackles and more shackles and more shackles, and you give one man the key to remove shackles, and that man doesn't even know how to operate a lock.
It's a fine metaphor.
Daniel Smith is in Ottawa this week. They're in Ottawa at a conservative convention. Speaking at this convention, Daniel Smith, Pierre Poilievre, Jason Kenney, and even Jasmine Lane, I believe, is speaking there as well, and a few other conservative voices. And I believe there's going to be a meeting with Mark Carney there, as well, as they try to get this MOU done. And the stumbling block is obviously the carbon capture, something that the oil companies were forced on them when climate extremism had the microphone. They don't have the microphone anymore. Larry Fink was a big proponent of it. Larry Fink, we showed you at the top of the show. Larry Fink was a big proponent of ESG, and because he runs some of the most powerful hedge funds in the world. ESG, they shoved down everybody's throat. Net Zero Alliance, he was part of all that crap. And they basically cut off funding to oil and gas, so they had to come up with ways to build pathways. Now they, Tim Hodgson and them say, oh, it's the oil companies that want to do pathways. No, they did pathways so they could operate, because you gave them the regulations and the things. They said this is the only way you're doing things, and now they're saying it's a dumb idea and a boondoggle and we can't compete. So Alberta right now, one of the things they might be negotiating is like, like they're trying to maybe kick it down the road and say, get a win for both sides and say, look, sure, we'll do your carbon pricing 5 years from now, hoping that the Liberals are out of power in 5 years. You know what I mean? Like maybe because the Liberals will want this as a win as well. They'll want to keep their carbon pricing. So this is the negotiation right now, because the oil companies are saying, we don't want anything, and we don't want any part of it. We don't want any part of it because it doesn't make sense, because it's not in the United States. It's not in any other of the big oil producers. Sure the heck not in Venezuela, Iran, Iraq, and Qatar, all these other places that supply energy to the world. Countries want cheap, reliable energy because it's important for prosperity, and security. Prosperity and security. The two things that Canada seems to want to has low on the podium of the, like, I mean, again, I'm going to say this is like, go listen to Mark Carney's Davos speech. That Davos speech is not to Canadians. That Davos speech is to the globalists in power. So if you want a prime minister that speaks to the global elitists, the top 1% of the people in the world, then that's your man. If you want somebody that wants to put Canada first, then we need to make some changes, or we need to put pressure on so changes happen. And that's what this show does. We just try to put pressure on and call power to account. And you have a big, powerful voice, and you can make things happen. But negotiations between that Liberal government and Alberta about that new pipeline are being held up with disagreements. I mean, it's obvious, right? I mean, like, even though Tim Hodgson will pretend that it's Daniel Smith wanting this carbon capture, I mean, that's how they use their trickery and their nonsense. They kind of like put it out there that, oh no, it's not even us, it's them that want it. We know that's not true. I mean, common sense tells you that's not true, right?
What I'm wondering most about is whether these companies will actually will they bother at all? But there's no attempt to kind of, there's no attempt to court them, is there? This is the thing, like, around the world. And when it comes, we just talked about Honda and the $5 billion that was promised to them in tax credits if they built that $15 billion plant. So it's like a third of the capex that have been promised in from the taxpayer. Just look at the way that they try and seduce these car companies or any company. You know, the way that they behaved with this defense bank. You know, they go out and they lobby. They unroll the red carpet. And there's everything. They will do everything. They're begging them, like, please choose us. Please bring your capital. We'll do anything. We'll suspend any law. We'll give you so much taxpayers' money. You'll be laughing. We will subsidize you, like with the carbon capture bollocks. We'll subsidize you 75 cents in the dollar. Like, we will just do anything. That's their attitude to those companies. And then here's Canada's literal bread and butter. What pays the Canadian mortgage and puts food on the table. And they're just like, if anything, they're trying to dissuade, not persuade. You know, it's like an attempt to push them away. It's this mad attitude to the golden goose. And what I'm interested in is, do these oil companies have it in them just to say, do you know what? No, just bugger off and just walk away. Just say, you know what? Screw this.
Well, they have.
We're not going to come here and be like shat on and slapped by you people. We're just going to go to like Mexico or something like that. We're just going to go somewhere else. We're going to go to like Venezuela.
Well, they have. I mean, we're seeing that in the going to Venezuela. We've seen that with Canadian Natural that just killed the project. We saw that with Teck when they killed the project. We're seeing $1 trillion leave Canada. A lot of that investment would have went into resources. We're seeing that over and over and over again. And yet they just, all they're interested in is how they're going to get some grift off the golden goose until they choke that golden goose into a death spiral, which is what they've done. The sad part of it, the sad reality of it is that there's 10% of Canada's population now is below the poverty line. And this shouldn't be in a nation like this. That's the sadness of it. And the Liberals will tell you, oh, we give them food stamps or whatever. They give them, you know, some crumbs. But they shouldn't be in there in the first place. And then record numbers standing in food bank lineups. People out of work, the youth unemployment in Canada, abysmally, you know, banging on the door of 20%. I mean, that in any other sane government with a real media, that would be a reason to have uprisings in the streets and throw this government out on its ass. But here in Canada, the media protects them. That media is the problem. So it's small independent outlets like ourselves that are trying to change that. And most of the work, the real work in Canada being done is by independent voices, because the mainstream media has sacrificed its moral duties as journalists for crumbs, and the Liberals know how to choke them off. And the companies like McKinsey and Co. that take billions from the Canadian taxpayer know how to market like crazy, and they sell this, package up this 10 years of absolute failure of policy and ideology, and then vault it out there to people like it's some kind of truth.
But let's compare the numbers though. You're talking about, and the percentages. You talk about billions of dollars being wasted. We could also look at the income that we get from oil, which is hundreds of billions of dollars. You talked about the poverty, 10% of people in poverty. I think there are certain other measures you can look at where people are like precarious, and it goes much higher, goes into the sort of 30s, 40%. Food bank usage, personal debt. What I think pretty much the worst on the planet is this country for personal debt. The fiscal position of the federal government and also provincial governments, like how indebted they are. I mean, we could just go on and on and on and on. If you watch this show, you know all these stats anyway. But these are huge, beefy, like chunky stats, like just in terms of percentages, real big proportions of the pie we're talking about here. And then you ask, okay, so why is this being done? This carbon capture thing and the carbon tax on emissions. Like, what's the actual reason? Why don't we break that down into percentages and real figures? And it ends up being like 0.13% of global emissions and things like that. Read the article from the former Liberal MP. She wrote an article in the Globe and Mail last week, I believe, or the beginning of this week, whenever it was. And she highlighted it all. Canada, and particularly the oil sands, represents basically nothing. You might as well save yourself the time and just call it nothing. That's what the oil sands represent in terms of global emissions. But that's what this is all for. So it's that percentage, less than 1%, less than 0.2% of world emissions, or whatever it is specifically. I can't remember the exact percentage. Just such a tiny little sort of gnat on the window of world emissions. And that's the justification. That's why we're doing this. That's why when we look at things like 10+% poverty, when we look at 15, 20% youth unemployment, when we look at all of these catastrophes unfolding in this country, those are the percentages that the Liberals look at, or the government in general. They look at those percentages and they say, you know what? Nah. And they hone in on this tiny, tiny little fraction that is so small that, like I say, it might as well be nothing, which is the Canadian contribution to world emissions. Can you believe it? Can you believe that people could fail such a basic moral test? It's not even a moral test. It's like a arithmetical test. It's like, how could you fail? It's like maths for kids or something, for like 5-year-olds. Which of these is bigger? Which of these is more consequential? You know what I mean? But this is when we start having these conversations, this is where I start to wonder if it really is incompetence, because like you've said and I've said, Catherine Swift has said, it almost gets to the point where like nobody could be this incompetent. You know, nobody could be this incapable. Certainly not anybody that's capable of walking and speaking and has their vision and hearing and so on. There's no way that they could make such poor decisions. So yeah.
I mean, not if your mission was to better the life of Canadians, and you looked at your actions and you say, does this make the life better for Canadians? And most of their policies, the answer would be a hard no. And I had high hopes for Tim Hodgson when he came in, because he had, a decent pedigree or CV as well, but he seems to be just a grifter as well. Won't answer questions. Here he is with Rosemary Barton here on the pipeline. Listen to this.
Week, signing the order to authorize the Bridgers pipeline, which would run along that same piece of the Keystone XL pipeline in the United States. I know Keystone has come up between the Prime Minister and the President before. Do you see this as potential leverage for Canada in trade talks?
Rosie, we're in the middle of discussions with the Americans. What we're focused on is building Canada strong. We're focused on making sure we are the clean and conventional energy superpower we can be. We are working with allies around the world to make them more energy secure. And we're very focused on diversifying the number of countries we can trade our energy with. Today, we trade almost all of our natural gas and oil with the United States. We think it's in our interest to diversify that. That's why the government was so supportive of building the original TMX expansion. That's why we are supportive of the potential optimization of the TMX pipeline, and that's why we're working with Alberta under the construct of the MOU to find a constructive way, a way that Canadians can agree to expand it to another 1 million barrels of oil to Tidewater, because that is consistent with what we need to do as a country.
Well, I'm not going to. I'll get to that pipeline because I certainly have some questions there as well. But certainly, Canada's not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, right? In the mouth. Like if the U.S. says we want more and here's a pipeline, that will presumably go ahead, I would imagine.
So as our Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, I'm focused on what we can control. Yeah. The United States has a process to go through. They have, as I understand it, given a permit for a pipeline to cross a border. Yeah. My understanding is there are several more steps in the U.S. regulatory.
Trump and Daniel Smith absolutely embarrassed Tim Hodgson and Mark Carney with their 14 months of nothingness, absolutely nothingness. And now they're saying, because they've got a permit, and they're likely going to start to stick a shovel in the ground here right away. And Tim's trying to distract from that and say, oh, well, they got lots of regulatory hurdles. From the pot calling the kettle black, this guy is an absolute, an embarrassment. He's on CBC there. And, the Tidewater one, their biggest thing is they want some grift. They want a taxation grift. They want this carbon capture grift. And again, the sad thing is, if you go look at, again, Brookfield's website, they've invested the most in carbon capture and green scheme technologies. So who's it in the best interest of? Canada, Alberta, Canadians, or Brookfield? Who's it in the best interest of? That's the question. That's the real question. Why doesn't Rosemary Barton ask that question? Too busy looking in the sausage roll bucket? Come on, Rosie. Come on, Rosie.
You'd think she'd have it next to her, so she always knows. She can always sort of keep count of how many are left.
She never looks a gift horse in the mouth. She knows where the next sausage rolls comes from. She behaves. But although I'm going to show you later, I'm almost retweeted Rosemary Barton. I just about fell off my own chair there. When I think, like we talked yesterday, at some point, the morality of these people, it's going to be a line or a bridge too far, a line that's crossed that they say, we can't do this anymore. Like, the Liberals get more and more, I guess, daring or audacious in their absolute contempt for democracy. And at some point, you have to look at, are we marching towards like a communist dictatorship, an authoritarian government where we don't have freedom of the press and freedom of questions, no access to them, and they've refused to be held accountable? We're going to show you the receipts for that too. Again, this show brings you truth. So if you can support this show, that's great. And the one way you can support it for sure is hit the subscribe button. 75% of the people that come here on a regular basis don't hit that subscribe button. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the share button, hit the like button, and make a comment. We try to interact. That's one thing this show also has, is a really, really good community. And if you want to make a contribution, you can as well. You go to thereallybigshow.ca, and you make a contribution there, or you can make a contribution here through Supers. We really appreciate it, and you can join becoming a thinking Canadian. There's my pitch. But here's Heather Exner-Perot, an advocate for energy here in Canada. We had her on the show. And she said that the BOE report, Canada-US pipeline close to reaching commitment required, and that's according to sources. And she said, so, like David Eby and them will say, oh, there's no private proponents. Energy is the most important thing right now in the world, and most people recognize it, other than extremists like Guilbeault, David Eby, Wab Kinew, Mark Carney. I think Mark Carney recognizes it, but he just wants his grift off of it, and the rest of them out there. But the extremists like Karina Gold, like she's still a Liberal MP. How she got reelected when she said that we need to landlock Alberta's resources. And you wonder why Alberta's pissed. You wonder why, when you have Liberal MPs like that. And Stephen Guilbeault, we're going to show you some of his gaslighting, what he did to Canada here too. But here's David Eby once again.
They're like the intellectual bottom feeders, aren't they? Like they don't really think these things through. But we skipped over, we're talking about Hodgie there, we skipped over the bit where he's saying, he was talking about the oil crisis. Fatty Birol said, Canada's been spared the worst of the oil crisis, but in his words, it will be your daily issue soon. I mean, it already is gas over $2.
It's going to be an inflation. It's going to drive inflation in Canada here. It's going to drive
But that's
inflation.
the thing. This is extremely relevant, isn't it? And I think as well, these Liberals, and I'm talking about the cabinet ministers here, people like Tim Hodgson, Mark Carney, they walk around with that smug little smile, the toothless grin that Mark Carney is fond of. They seem to have been under the impression that they're invincible. But if we have a full-blown energy crisis here in this country, and gas becomes just impossible to buy for most people, or many people, and it starts to really cripple this country, maybe even sends it into recession, then I think even this denuded, worthless media landscape of Canada, I think a few people might join the dots and say, wait, we've got a massive oil crisis here, energy crisis here, we're all suffering, we're all poorer. And you've done what exactly in the last 13, 14 months to build out our energy infrastructure? You know, eventually people are going to put those two things together, aren't they? So they can be as smug as they like, but if this does, as Fatty says, if this does become a serious situation for Canada, you know, the Liberals are they're gonna seriously pay for their failure to act.
Abysmal, absolutely abysmal. John Rustad put this out here, and this is David Eby. You know, he's saying he doesn't get why Ottawa is focused on a pipeline. How does he not get the message? How does David Eby not get the message from the world in general? How is he so oblivious or ignorant to the plight of millions of people, millions and millions of people, and Canadians? Again, 10% below the poverty line. And then half the Canadians right now can't meet their monthly obligations. And then record food bank lineups. And our oil and gas sector could rectify a lot of that. Food inflation, the highest in the G7. Yet David Eby still puts his ideology first. Still puts his ideology first.
He's putting his party first, isn't he? He's putting his own job first because he relies on the party approving of him to keep his job. And that's the kind of, you know, that's the kind of moral standards, unfortunately, that the Canadian elite all too often shows. How can you operate with leaders like that? How can you expect to be prosperous, as you said a moment ago, when you have leaders like that?
Accountability and transparency is another pillar of democracy, and committee hearings is one of the ways that we get accountability, or we haven't seen a lot of it. Accountability and transparency in how they spend our tax dollars. You know, they're taking, you know, up to half of your money here just in taxation, just in your income tax. And then you add on the HST, property transfer taxes, all tax after tax after tax, GST. And they don't want to be held accountable. Listen to this here. This is the CBC. And you lose the CBC as the Liberal Party. You know something's wrong. Listen to them talk about shutting down committees here.
I mean, what would be the point of this tactically, Chantal? Like, I just don't understand why, if you've got your majority, why, and you have control of the committees, why the committees can't just do their work so that people know what they're doing.
So government insiders tonight would have you believe that all of a sudden in what 4 committees, Liberal MPs woke up with a personal initiative to do this. I find that very hard to believe.
No kidding.
It's like the light came on in every brain at the same time. But in any event, this is a dangerous thing to do for the government. I'm not going to go into accountability, but rather this is a government that has a very fragile majority, one that can be questioned by some on legitimacy. There will be by-elections. If you are going to spend the time between now and then convincing Canadians that the reason you wanted a majority was to shut down debate, good luck, because one day you will start losing seats. And at some point you will lose that very fragile majority. So of all of the things you can think that were smart to do this week, getting a majority and using it to do this is probably one of the dumbest moves that one has seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, there's at least 2 by-elections, right? Jonathan Wilkinson now on the West Coast and Alexandre Boulris. So, and maybe Naderskin-Smith. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there might be others. But this is a party that lost ridings like St. Paul's in Toronto and ridings in downtown Montreal not that long ago. So the notion that they are suddenly sheltered from anything that they do that would have no consequences is really short-sighted.
Andrew, what do you make of it?
Well, of course, that's precisely why they wanted the majority, was to do things like this. So there's only revealing what was actually true. This government, even as a minority, was in no danger of falling, not when you're 15 points ahead in the polls. The issue was, how fast could you ram stuff through Parliament? And for that, you need control of the committees. It is one of the more risible comments of recent times is Stephen McKinnon saying that the committees are masters of their own agenda. I don't think 5-year-olds believe that anymore. Althea's point in particular, I think, is worth restating. It's not just MPs in general, it's government MPs in particular who are abstaining from their proper role as watchdogs on the government. I know it's been a long time since MPs on the government side of any stripe have actually done that, but this is a big part of the problem with our system right now is there's really no effort to hold the government to account on the government side at all. They really do see themselves as foot soldiers for the government agenda. So do the opposition MPs for their party, but at least the opposition's role is to expose government wrongdoing and to question government misdeeds. That's maybe a partisan objective, but it serves the public interest to have that done. It's not that this is terribly new, as was mentioned. This is the sort of thing you saw.
I wonder who else is shirking their role as a government watchdog. Just let me think. Who else that has a position of power and $1.5 billion of taxpayer dollars? Who else is shirking their responsibility? Wonder. But it's got to be bad when you start to lose the liberal.
Unrelatedly, what the hell is Rosemary Barton doing? Why is she choosing to say that? Like, what a petty, low-grade, cheap thing to do. Her name is Chantal Hébert. Like, shut up. Shut up, man. As if it's like, how dare he impinge upon the dignity of the glorious Madame Hébert. It's like, shut up. As if that was worth tweeting. This woman that never tweets anything as well, like.
And here it is, this boondoggle here, the Liberals block motion to make the health minister testify on the failed e-prescribing program that they've now killed. That was paying $1 million. $1 million was being paid out in the CEO salary and also $200,000 bonus in this failure, absolute failure. And this is from Pierre Poilievre. There's no public scrutiny, no accountability, no transparency. But also, this nonprofit prescribe it program spend more than $400,000 in executive travel. I mean, they just don't care. They just don't care. Could you even think of how you could spend $400,000 in travel in 3 years? Like, I mean, you'd have to work hard at it, wouldn't you?
I mean, I would give Mark Carney a text and ask him who his chef is, and maybe the catering could take me to that.
Can you believe that, though? I mean, they're just living off the taxpayer dollars. So what is he taking all his young secretaries for a ride, too? Like, what? How can you spend $400,000 in 3 years on executive travel? That just spits in the face of the taxpayer that now doesn't even have enough money, to put food on the table for their family, and they just take and take and take and take. I mean, this guy should be not only like in committee, he should put on trial and wasting Canadian taxpayer dollars while Canadians suffer, especially the ones standing in food bank lineups. This guy just flaunting it as he got his face in the trough, gobbling like a pig.
Isn't it amazing, though? I'm just going to quote verbatim. Right, word for word, I'm going to quote what Mark Carney said just yesterday. A free society depends on institutions properly being held to account. It depends on the law standing between power and the powerless. That bit I sort of edited a little bit there, but he said exactly these words. Free society depends on institutions properly being held to account. How do those words sound? Put those words, let them reverberate around your head and while reading that tweet. Will those two things ever even coexist in the same room? What liberals say and what liberals do?
And
it just seems like it's almost like antimatter and matter or whatever, isn't it? It's like some sort of obscure experiment in physics or something like that to try and get these two things to coexist simultaneously.
And they don't want any accountability on it. And that's the rub. They don't want transparency. How many committees that are shutting down, going in camera? How many committees have they still not produced the paperwork for? And that includes Stephen Guilbeault's alleged $200 million that he funneled off into green schemes. How much money has been wasted on green schemes here in Canada? How much is still being wasted? We saw you that with the wind farm that was doled out to Liberal insiders. We will not get accountability in Canada until we change this government, because this government refuses accountability and transparency. We will not get accountability and transparency until we remove the funding for media in Canada. And the Rosemary Bartons and David Cochrans are forced to work like as real journalists for their money instead of getting doled out sausage rolls from the government.
Or maybe we'll send them off to the sausage roll mines so that they can see what it's like to actually harvest those sausage rolls in the first place.
Here, and then we got a new appointment yesterday. We got Carney's choice to represent the monarchy fails to say whether she believes in the monarchy, which is kind of like an interesting kind of juxtaposition there. Like, why not, right? The woman set to become King Charles III's new rep has failed to say whether she believes in the monarchy in an extraordinary press conference held in Ottawa. Louise Arbour, a Liberal a lawyer, judge, activist from Montreal. I love that activist thing, right? That's what we need, is another bloody activist here in Canada. And she said, I will accede to function in which I will be the representative of the Crown in a constitutional arrangement. And she'll be the third Quebec-born Governor General in succession. Yeah.
So it's a Quebec job now, isn't it? The last person not from Quebec to be appointed was in 2010.
Yeah.
That's 16 years ago. This is just another part of the Quebec patronage complex, isn't it? It's like, yeah, Governor General, yep, Quebec. Yeah. That's a Quebec thing now.
Let's play a little clip there.
Risa. Good morning, Raisa Patel, the Toronto Star. Prime Minister, you said in your recent trip to Armenia that it's your strong personal view that as the international order will be rebuilt, it will be rebuilt out of Europe. What did you mean by that? Do you see a future where Europe overtakes the U.S. as the center of the world order?
Well, I think there's a direct line to what we're celebrating today. I think we are celebrating the constitutional role of the Governor General. And other Canadians are celebrating Madame Arbour's willingness to serve in that role, which is a belief in democracy, the rule of law, that we're all equal before that law. And imperfectly, the international system had variants of that. Madame Arbour's part of her very distinguished career was to make sure that those who transgressed in the most egregious ways those rules, norms, standards were prosecuted and brought to justice. That system, as I've observed in the past, and I'm not alone in making these observations, has been greatly weakened and needs to be rebuilt, and rebuilt perhaps in a different way, but rebuilt based on the same principles. And Canada, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia, other countries share very firm convictions with those principles, and we will work together to rebuild. And obviously there's a critical mass in Europe of countries, 27 members of the European Union, but then a broader grouping that you saw in that meeting in Armenia, over 50 countries that have some form of association with Europe. And
okay, that's enough. That's enough from Kamala Harris there. I don't know what
it's like white noise, isn't it?
I don't know what he's talking about. What does he say? And who believes it anyway?
I don't think he knows. That's the point. I don't think he knows.
Like, her question is dumb to begin with. Do you think this new world order will replace the United States? And with what military shall they use?
What economy? You know, what anything? What technology? What knowledge base? Like, it's all just absurd fantasy. And then to answer like that.
They do have the hotel. They do have the hotel. They do have strongly worded letters. The globalist
It's
world
all so
order.
tiresome, isn't it? It's just so demoralizing. Sometimes I wonder if that's the point, though.
The globalists lost control of the world when they lost the election. Because they liked it when Joe Biden was wandering away in the meadow, because they could kind of control the United States. Just as Joe walked off and they kind of went and got him back and just like, no, Joe, we're over here now. No, Joe. No, Joe. There's some pushback on his pick, though, from conservative circles. We got a little clip here. Let's play that little clip here.
Well, nothing prevents Canada from working with other countries right now. We don't need a global compact that binds Canada to provisions that are agreed to at the United Nations. We can do that already. And indeed, we have in many areas. But what we're saying today is that by signing on to this compact, our sovereignty to make those decisions ourselves as a country will be eroded. That's why we're opposed to it.
There is a lot of these globalists, she's a globalist as well, worked for the UN, is signing all these deals with the WHO, with the UN, and all these compacts. UNDRIP is part of the problem too, right? UNDRIP and DRIPA and all these things here are all globalist kind of like agendas that are not Canadian agendas. But people like this new Governor General, Mark Carney's, push this globalist order onto Canada. Why does Canada need a globalist order? Why doesn't Canada govern Canada for Canada? Well, let's ask Iain. He lived in the European Union. Did the European Union serve the interests of the everyday citizen of the nation that they lived in, or did it serve the globalist order?
I mean, it certainly served the people and continues to serve the people that join the nomenclatura, the gigantic bureaucracy. Certainly, like, it brought and brings benefits, but primarily it is people like Ursula von der Leyen. She's the perfect representative of that organization. It really is. It's an attempt as well for small European countries and weak European countries to pretend like they're part of something that matters. I mean, you can draw your own conclusions whether the European Union actually matters. But as for the Governor General, I just want to point out that she's a liberal with a lowercase L, very possibly also an uppercase L. I don't know what her private political views are. But in terms of her public actions and her publicly expressed views, she's a left liberal human rights campaigner. It's kind of an insult, really, to put somebody this obviously politicized and partisan, and it's boring as well. That's another thing that it is. But I think it's irresponsible to put somebody like this in a job like this. I mean, it's just not. It doesn't seem conducive to unity, and it doesn't bring Canadians together at all, really. And I can't get my head around why they make these stupid decisions all the time. And we're talking about, we mentioned, didn't we, earlier there, how she was asked, do you believe in the monarchy? She's the representative of the monarch in Canada was asked, do you believe in the monarchy? And couldn't give an answer because presumably the answer is no. Is that wise? I mean, is that wise to appoint somebody like that? It all just seems a bit foolish and a little bit self-destructive. But she's also someone, bear in mind, that was involved in the prosecution of Milosevic, the Serbian nutcase who made a mess of Yugoslavia, the Balkans, if anybody can remember that shambles. Anyway, she prosecuted him, and one of the reasons that was interesting is because that was the leader of a country being prosecuted by, you talk about the globalists, basically by like a globalist court, by some sort of fantasy court that claimed jurisdiction. Very controversial, and it upset quite a lot of countries. It upset the Russians because they're one of many countries that reject that idea. That you can have this kind of, you can just take a head of state and prosecute them somewhere, like bring them to the Netherlands and prosecute them there. They prefer all that to be done in-house. They have the nationalist view. But she did that. And then during this press conference, Mark Carney said in his speech, he said he believes that the dignity of every person should not be a product of the accidents of geography, citizenship, or convenience, and that Canada's place in the world is to be a country that lives those propositions and helps others to live them as well. And he very strongly praised her role there in prosecuting Milosevic. How does that sound when you think about, I don't know, slaveholders in China, for example, people who literally have a sort of group of slaves under their command in places like Xinjiang? How does Carney live out those opinions, that philosophy that he claims to have? Where's the prosecution of Xi Jinping? Do you know that there are still people alive now who were responsible for mass murder in Tiananmen Square? The mass murder of predominantly students in China? They're still alive now. Are they going to be prosecuted? Is Louise Arbour going to prosecute those people? Is she going to call for them to be prosecuted? Is Mark Carney going to call for them to be prosecuted? Or is Mark Carney just going to say something stupid and trivial, like, yeah, let's arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he comes to Canada? Yeah, good one. Nice one. Real brave. That was a real brave take. That took some big brass balls to say that, Mark. How about let's punish the people that committed the massacre in Tiananmen Square in 1989? Should we do that? I'm waiting for Mark Carney to say that, because apparently he believes in that. He's just appointed this woman who believes in that principle. Is that going to happen? Or is this all a load of bollocks? Is this all just a complete fantasy and fraud by people who are only really interested in themselves and don't believe a word of what they say? Who knows?
I didn't put the clip in, but there was a clip I was considering to put in about her explaining to people how you have to watch your terminology when it comes to migrants, and we have to be very open and willing and just really watch our terminology. So she's a big proponent of open borders and open migration into nations here that have wreaked havoc here in Canada. And here's Telus. We want to talk about this. Telus loves to trick you as well. Telus unions complaining of call centers using AI to change the accents of workers. Uniforms complain that Telus is using AI in foreign call centers, altering how customers perceive who they're talking to. Isn't that wild?
I'm not surprised though, because it's one of talk about massacres and atrocities. This is a massacre of the consumer, isn't it? This is an atrocity committed against the consumer. Having to speak to someone who is probably at like 25% proficiency in the English language to try and get something sorted out. And that's just language, never mind general competence.
Do you want to
For a Canadian company to do that to their own customers is an atrocity. And now they're trying to hide it, really. This is like the equivalent of having a building that's fallen down and just like, you just try and paint over it to make it look like it's still, like the bricks aren't going to collapse any minute.
Or like you do with the Liberals, you point to the new doorbell while the whole place is on fire. The, who wants open borders? Who wants like all this cheap labor in Canada? Look who benefited from it. That's where you need to look. Companies like Telus, companies like Rogers. We showed you that the other day. Rogers loved all the new customers, cheap customers. And then also Tim Hortons, A&W, McDonald's, in telecom, all wanted the cheap labor. And even a UN report says Canada's running what's called like modern day slavery, where they abuse workers. And it's for the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. And you paid for that with higher inflation, no access to healthcare, free healthcare in Canada, but no access to get a test, get anything done here in Canada. We're having to send people to the United States here in British Columbia for cancer treatments and all that. I mean, it's all over the place. Even when I interviewed David Eby, he said Canada's immigration policy was daft. And yet we continued down the path. And this is a lady they appointed as Governor General who wants more daft policies, I'm assuming. This guy still has his job Do you have the beaver just before we get going? The beaver, because we haven't had the beaver on.
Bring the temperatures down a bit.
So people are asking for him to release a consultation report tied to Bill C-22 so that they can look at it. He says it's privileged information. Again, I would like to remind Gary that all the information is the taxpayers' information, and the opposition should not be held back from seeing it because they also have a job to do to hold government to account. But this government refuses, absolutely refuses to be held accountable. And this is just, again, another spit in the face of democracy. Take it away, Gary. Maybe we should use AI, use the voice thing so that like Telus can do it. We should have the beaver speak for Gary because it's probably more
I
effective.
thought you were going to say, let's give Gary like a voice similar to like Mark Carney's or something. So it's like, interesting question instead of his strange way of speaking.
Let's go, Gary.
Is happening right now is a bit of a distraction of what the core issue is, which is discussion on the bill itself.
Minister, you're making it a distraction by refusing to reveal the report. The very fact that we're talking about it today, even people who receive the report, people who support C-22, people who are against C-22, they're baffled of why this report hasn't been revealed. It's becoming a distraction because you're making it a distraction, Minister. Why not just reveal the report?
The matter is not about the report, Mr. Lloyd. You know this. This is about the bill itself. The bill is presented by myself and Mr. Fraser. If you have specific questions about the bill, I will be more than willing to answer, but I'm not willing to answer you on privileged information that I believe I sought from Mr. Rankin, which informed our decisions. But there's also a number of other individuals that I met, Mr. Fraser met. We consult people on a range of people on developing a bill.
Why should the Minister, I've given you plenty of time to respond. Why should the stakeholders who participate at the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, other stakeholders, why do they have more of a right to see what is in this report than members of Parliament who are being asked to vote on this legislation?
So I will, as I said, if you would like to invite Mr. Rankin to testify, you're more than welcome to do so.
How many times do we show clips from these committees and hear the Liberal ministers say, I'm not going to answer that, or I'm not willing to answer that? What? Who do you think you are? Who the hell do you think you are? You are a servant. Act like a servant.
We will not get accountability.
And of course,
they're
not really servants, are they? But they should be reminded of that now and then. But they're servants who act like masters, you know? The servants have taken over the manor.
We will not get accountability until this government is changed out, and we need a majority to make sure they can put in rules so that this never, ever happens again. There is so much accountability that needs to be taken care of. But you're talking about beavers. You talked about this beaver yesterday. The beavers, at some point, are going to get angry and go after guys like Gary. But like, here we got this beaver. Actually had enough of this Canadian stonewalling.
I was getting attacked by a fucking beaver. Yo! Look at this shit. Oh my fucking god. Holy shit.
That's good. That's good.
That's so sad to see, isn't it? The honourable, dignified beaver being hurled around like that. So what the hell?
Don't mess with the beavers, man. Don't mess with a beaver.
That's not the way to treat beavers, is it? They don't deserve that sort of hands-on. Don't ever lay your hands on a beaver. I would say that's pretty much rule number one, isn't it?
We've done quite a bit on this on MAID here, especially with John Carpane. He says, and we don't do anything right now. The law is in 2027, you can get MAID here in Canada for a mental disorder. And, you know, the Conservatives are working hard to stop this, to make changes. But here we got a clip here from Michael Cooper.
Section 4 of Module 7 on MAID and mental illness, entitled Specific Mental Disorders and MAID Assessments, features, quote, the most common disorders associated with MAID requests. Common disorders featured in this section include major depression, personality disorders, trauma-related disorders such as PTSD, substance use disorder, and autism spectrum disorder. So to be clear, anyone with these disorders and others, including autism spectrum disorder or substance use disorder, or someone with PTSD, could qualify for MAID in the context of having a sole underlying mental health disorder, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, CAMAP is, and just to be clear, could be anything in the DSM-5.
As long as it meets all of the criteria related to a grievous and irremediable medical condition.
Right, so that would include things like anxiety, schizophrenia, etc., correct?
It's entirely possible.
Okay. Section.
We showed you that story, I think it was yesterday or the day before. Catholic, I think it was an older Catholic guy, went into the hospital there and he had a hip replacement. They offered him MAID twice. What is it? They just walk around in the rooms? Hey, how you feeling? You want MAID? Really? Hey? How you doing today?
Maybe they start off a bit easier, a bit sort of softer. It's like, beautiful day, huh? Would you like a Snickers? Have you ever considered being killed by a doctor? It's just like, have you ever considered having the pain go away? It's like, it is mad, isn't it? Imagine doing that. How would you live with yourself?
Maybe they're being incentivized. Because, I mean, I don't know anybody that in their right mind that goes around offering it, especially twice. Well, John Carpe said he had somebody in the hospital, one of his clients, for a back injury, and they were offered it, I can't remember the exact number, 5, 6 times. Like, what do you got to have a sign out front said, I don't, remember they were for offices, no soliciting, no MAID soliciting, like F off.
Yeah. Maybe you have to get a tattoo on your chest or something, or on your arm. So it's like, I did not consent to MAID, just in case.
We all remember that Jasper fire, another part of the failed ideologies here in Canada. Every time there was a wildfire, they stepped up to the podium right away and they spoke about climate change. They never spoke about the failures to manage forests. They spoke about climate change. And Parks Canada undertaking more proactive fire prevention measures in the aftermath of Alberta's Jasper National Park. And that's from the interim CEO. Previous managers left thousands of acres of dead pine standing prior to the 2024 fire, and they blamed climate change when a third of the town burned down. Remember, they went after Daniel Smith as well, and Daniel Smith let him have a hellstorm after that. And Daniel Smith was right, and Stephen Guilbeault, and I think it was Sarjeet was the minister at the time, Minister Harjit Sanjan. He's got himself a new gig, though.
Yeah, he's doing well. I know you're going to continue here, but can we just read this sentence again? This is such a good... This is worth the Blacklog subscription on its own, this sentence. Previous managers left thousands of acres of dead pine standing prior to a 2024 fire, then blamed climate change when a third of the town burned. This is you just don't get that. This is a journalistic flourish, isn't it? Where it just highlights the absurdity of these ridiculous people. And it does it in a pretty calm and measured way. It's like, yeah, they completely screwed up and then they blamed climate change.
And then how
All
many
in one nice sentence.
And how many of the legacy media jumped on that? And then
all of them.
How many of them jumped on Daniel Smith when she pushed back on it? How many went after her? Right? It's absolutely crazy. A third of the town burned down. And that caused, that lightning strike caused that fire, $1.3 billion in losses. And the cabinet used that opportunity to promote their climate change agendas. And this was Sanjeet at the time. I would just take this opportunity to remind Canadians that the impact of climate change has on our country. Sadly, the community of Jasper was a victim of this.
What a fraud. What an absolute fraud. There is no other way to describe that behavior. A liar and a fraud. A minister of the Crown misrepresenting reality to try and deceive Canadians. That is how can you forgive behavior like that? I don't know.
And they said that records show there was 577,000 acres of dead trees that were killed by pine beetle, and then cut its fire preparedness budget by 23%. Not only did they leave the trees standing, they cut their budget so that they could do anything about it. And then they stood up there. It's almost like they wanted this to happen so that they could stand up there. Excuse me.
And yeah, you know, I would advise people to watch our interview with Mario Canseco, the pollster, when I asked him about the decline in concern about the environment or climate change in all the polls. It's not just his polls. Every poll has shown it. And he said he thinks that it's the new normal. You think that, like, it's not just a blip. It's that people really have lost interest because other things have taken priority, like the economy and, you know, how well you're doing in your life, food security and things like that. So it was all, if that is, you know, if that is true, it's quite a cynical take on it. But if they almost did this on purpose so that they could say, look, climate change, guys, then it's rather backfired, hasn't it? It's a bit of a failure if that was their devious
And this
plan.
is from the Forest Service. The fire risk was known. And they cut their budget, and they lost a third of the town of Jasper. And then they stood up at the podium right away and claimed the villain is climate change. And then Justin Trudeau and them said, you know, you're worried about your rent, you're worried about your food. There's more important things to worry about, and that's climate change. Absolute frauds, like Ian said.
Then the greatest sin is that they didn't then go on to say, oh yeah, this is caused by climate change, which is primarily caused by CO2 emissions, which primarily nowadays come from India, China, and the United States. So we're gonna go to the UN. We're gonna scream in the faces of those countries, the leaders of those countries. We are furious with China, particularly for building out all of its coal, and India, all of its coal plants. We're absolutely red hot with anger. That's not what they said. They said, and that's why it's important that we have a carbon tax, so that all the poor Canadians can struggle to buy gas and be hungry every day. You know, they made it about Canada. They made it as if Canada could have an impact on world carbon dioxide emissions. So they doubled down. It was false to claim it in the first place, that it was caused primarily by climate change. And then it was false to say that Canada could do anything about it, or Canadians could do anything about it. Nothing Canadians can do about climate change. I don't know how many times that has to be said. Canada's way too insignificant to have an impact on that.
Listen to this in committee. This is in October 7th, 2024, as they committed, like as they did investigated this absolute tragedy here. As they turned away fire trucks too. Like it's almost like their incompetence was intentional. Listen to this.
I don't know if you've been paying attention to the committee business that's been happening, but the last committee meeting we had, the Minister of Emergency Preparedness say to this committee that he left no stone unturned in order to do everything he could to prevent the loss of property in Jasper National Park. Would you agree with that sentence?
I would not.
Okay, the testimony that you've given before this committee today is actually quite alarming. So can you just confirm to me that in a short amount of time, you were able to muster 20 fire trucks and 50 professional firefighters? And could you tell me what the qualifications of those firefighters would be? Were they fire-tested firefighters?
Yes. So I did have 20 fire trucks and 50 firefighters. Majority of the firefighters I had were NFPA 10001, 10002, as well as numerous firefighters that were wildland firefighters, either wildland firefighter type 1 or wildland firefighter type 2.
So could you explain to the committee what that level of certification actually means? That's some fairly technical language. These are fully certified firefighters. These are, and you said each of them had credentials and have experience fighting fires before?
That's correct. So the NFPA qualifications are the same as any municipal firefighter. So similar to Calgary or Edmonton or any fire hall, majority of fire halls in Alberta do subscribe to the NFPA standard. So the volunteer firefighters are trained to the same standard as a big city fire department. The wildland firefighters are the same firefighters that qualifications that are recognized through CIFC. So the type 1 firefighter would be the government agency firefighter. The type 2 firefighter would be the contract firefighter.
Okay. In your testimony, you said that the hydrants in Jasper National Park are not the same as the hydrants that are used virtually everywhere else in British Columbia and Alberta. Did I hear that correctly?
That is correct.
So you also said there's only 7 adapters available. So I'm guessing when you say this, what you're meaning is the adapter that you would need to plug in to the hydrants in Jasper. There was only 7 of these adapters, so that I'm guessing the Jasper fire trucks, like the ones that are there all the time, are probably able to tie in. My experience from being a warden in Jasper, there's only a couple of fire trucks in town. I'm not belittling their fire service. I think it's a great volunteer fire service like everywhere else. But anybody else coming to the community to help would be virtually, they have 7 adapters. So basically 7 rigs could tie in. Is that right?
Aside from their mutual aid partners that they rely on, such as Hinton and Clearwater County, any other fire trucks coming at us that do not have a normal working relationship with the Parks Canada
That's good
communities.
Enough. This goes on for a while. Obviously, there were so many mistakes made and so much. And again, the question is why? The question is why? Why did they cut their budget? Why did they, when they knew that there was a fire risk, like the Forest Service knew there was a fire risk? Daniel Smith had some great things to say about this as well. Not that I want to go into it too much, but like, it's the audacious claims that here's Guilbeault here too. It was clear more than once that the big ugly fire in Alberta is a great boost for the environment minister's Stephen Guilbeault's climate agenda. So they used this fire, and the government-funded media trumpeted it to the world, into the living rooms of people that started screaming about the world burning down. And I believe it was Mark Miller. No, that you can't even. Was it Mark Miller? What was the guy that said you can't drive across the country because you're going to blame Mark Holland, right? Yeah.
Mark Holland. He's also the guy that said it's discriminatory and unfair for doctors to not be able to kill people who have mental illnesses, because right now we can only kill people who have physical illnesses. And he said that's just not right. We should also be able to kill depressed people. But I should say, look, this is hardly this National Post thing. That's hardly that controversial. We know the playbook now, don't we? And it doesn't just apply to the environment. Look at America. How there are people who are just they almost. I have a feeling that they just sit around and read police press releases from every county and city in the United States, and they just wait for something that they could jump on as a kind of police brutality case, particularly one that had something to do with race or racism. It's just, and that's just 2 examples: environment and police. It's everything. They jump on these things and they say, look, see, it's urgent. Like, let's get on my bandwagon. Let me just write all these laws and make all these demands. Don't worry. Don't be suspicious. Don't, let your guard down. It's all right. This is an emergency. I've got it sorted out. I'll fix it. Like, just look at that fire, or just look at that video of the cop there. It's standard behavior. So yeah, I think that's completely fair, that opinion article there in the Post, although it is a couple of years old, but
yeah, but it was at the time, that's what was going on.
Contemporaneous.
I'm going to skip over a couple of stories in the interest of getting done by 11, and plus to give my voice a bit of a break. Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklin here, he's asked some questions on the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is, we need to stop saying Sovereign Wealth Fund, Sovereign Debt Fund, or another liberal boondoggle waiting to happen. Let's listen to Tiff here.
$25 billion of debt at the current rates. Could you give us an estimate roughly of how much that would cost on interest?
Look, I don't have that number in front of me. It's going to depend on whether you go short term, longer term.
Yeah, that's
term.
right. No, I understand.
don't
It depends
have the number
on the term, but just a rough range of what that cost will be?
I don't have that number in front of me. Well, I mean, I can, if you want some calculations, we can do some for you. But
yeah.
I actually think that's a much better. It's really
a
question for the government.
Okay.
It's, the government has announced the plan. The government's going to need a funding plan to go with that. It's really a question for them.
I mean, it's obvious. Billions of dollars. That's what it's going to cost. Billions of dollars to service.
I can't do those calculations.
And then,
What? You're in the wrong job then, mate.
I mean, he could just do it off like the side of his desk here in a quick second. Should know that. But I mean, the better question, Sandra, is can we point to any successes of all these other funds that have been taken off the balance sheet here and kicked off to the side in these special groups? Can we name any? Canada Infrastructure Bank, where it's been showing these guys push paper around and just draw big salaries and spend money, huge expense accounts. Nothing gets done. They give money to China. Canada Infrastructure Bank lent money to China for a Communist Party shipbuilder. Canada Infrastructure Bank, China. And then here's the federal deficit since the Liberals took power in 2015. Not bad, eh?
Wow, look at the glory days of 2015 now. $1 billion deficit.
Well, Harper had a surpluses in there too. We should have surpluses. We are a resource nation.
But like we saw with Trudeau with that soliloquy when he was auditioning for the stage play there with Honda. He frames this as a moral duty. It's the morally decent thing to do, to go into massive amounts of debt to throw money around at Japanese companies and stuff like that ends up being wasted anyway. Like, that's a moral imperative, and the Conservatives don't want to do that. And that's the dichotomy that's created, isn't it, by the liberal big brains. It's either go into massive amounts of debt and be a good person, or be cautious about debt and be evil.
Ask yourself this question. After all this debt, up to 2025 there, 2026 now, is the bulk of Canadians' lives better? I know that the liberal elite is a lot better off, but is the bulk of Canadian lives better? Like, we have 10% below the poverty line now. We have half of Canadians that cannot meet their monthly obligations. We have record food bank lineups. And look at the money we spent, and look at the suppression of our natural resources. Can we put up this picture of Justin on the boat? Because, he's paying the price, isn't he? Right?
Poor chap. Well, like I said, he obviously hasn't even got time to do leg day. That's how busy he is. He's skipping leg day every week so that he can, write speeches, I guess. Write speeches so that he can get $100,000 a shot. That's a hard life.
It reminds me, right now it feels like it's a circus song. The show must go on, though. We're here trying to bring you the truth, even though, my voice isn't really here. But again, I think it sounds a little like Stevie Nicks.
Oh, what's his name? Is Tom Waits? See the fella that sounds like that?
I don't know.
It's also important, though, thinking about Trudeau. Somebody mentioned Laura here is talking about Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I think she is, anyway. It's important to remember, isn't it? The money in the Trudeau family, I believe it was the grandfather, wasn't it? That's when they came into money with his gas station empire that he created, which has led... Funnily enough, led to Justin Trudeau sitting on a yacht with a nice little drink there in his linen shirt. So fossil fuels were good for something, I guess. But it's important to remember that Trudeau and his father, so Pierre and Justin, they're passing down the wealth, and it's going to continue. The next generation, he's got 3 kids. They're going to inherit massive amounts of money, not to mention all the advantages of having that name and that being a part of that network. But it's just going to perpetuate down the generations. It's kind of everything that Justin Trudeau sort of purports to be against, like this intergenerational hoarding of wealth and power, fossil fuels, even for that matter, toxic masculinity and things like that, and like all the things he says he's against, he pretty much enjoys himself, doesn't he? Sitting on the yacht there with his sonnies and his pop star girlfriend as he spends his inheritance obtained through the sale of fossil fuels.
Again, and so more than a decade now, 11 years of this Liberal government, failed ideologies, still running the same policies, basically. I don't know what's changed. It's the same policies, same stuff, same people, different roles, musical chairs. They played a little musical chairs, same stuff. And what did we get out of it? We got separatist movements. Here's Mark Carney reacting to the 300,000 petition signatures on the province-wide referendum in Alberta for independence.
Alberta separatists say they have more than 300,000 signatures to potentially trigger a referendum vote. What will you do to stop that referendum from winning?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is there's, again, keeping with the discussion today, there's the rule of law, there's the Clarity Act, which has been opined upon by the Supreme Court. Not at the same time when Madame Arbour was sitting on the Supreme Court, but has been the judgment passed there, and any referenda in any part of Canada need to be consistent with that. As you know as well, there's a judicial challenge separately but relatedly by Indigenous nations in Alberta regarding the question. So those processes have to be followed through, but. If you bring it into, so I'm observing that because of the solemnity of the moment that we're observing today and celebrating today, but if you bring it into my day-to-day responsibilities and those of the government, it's to continue to act as we have from the start, which is in the spirit of cooperative federalism, making the country work, making it work for Albertans, making it work for Indigenous peoples, making it work for all Canadians. Thank you.
That's a lot of waffle. Does he sound like he's taking it seriously?
No.
He said, like, he should know better than anyone. Well, he should know as well as anyone, since with his experience during the Brexit referendum. These things change fast. The impossible to imagine can sometimes actually happen.
Their own
when you have
ideology.
something like a referendum and a yes or no question, it really can go either way.
They won't remove the neck their clutches off the neck of the golden goose. They keep choking the goose, and they're wondering why. Like the goose is getting irritated.
I'm sure that's a euphemism for something that we didn't.
Choking his chicken.
The chicken's choking you, by the sounds of it.
I interviewed a guy from 2nd Street before, but he points out universal health systems, and he points out universal health systems that ban private options, Canada, and then he points out ones that also allow private treatment. There's the list. Australia, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Chile, Denmark, Finland, Germany. And a lot of them have way better healthcare systems than Canada. And you can get in to see, doctors and that. And because they're pushing back on Alberta right now, there's articles going out there. The public-private healthcare model coming to Alberta breaches Canada's Health Act, legal expert argues. I mean, again, all they do is they go after Alberta for almost everything. It's just crazy. Like Alberta doesn't want to obey.
But just think about this. What happens when you allow private healthcare? You legalize private healthcare. What is the result of that? Most people, if you ask the average person, they say, "Oh, right, private doctors would, open up. Private clinics would open up." Okay, in Canada though, yeah, that's where they don't know. So then rich people would jump the queue, and they would go and spend their money there. And then what would happen to that money? It would be taxed in Canada, and it would filter through Canada. Right, so not the end of the world then, not the worst situation. It would still, there'd be money flowing around. What happens now in Canada? Those same rich people go to the United States or Mexico or wherever it is, Switzerland or something like that. You know, they go to another country, they take their money out of this country, they trade in Canadian dollars for US dollars or whatever it is, and then they support jobs and social systems and whatnot overseas.
Stop it with the
Again, I
logic.
hate to say it, like, but is that not obvious? Is that not absolutely obvious?
Stop it with logic. Stop it with the logic.
Again, that's one of those things where this would only be possible to do if you did it, like, if everybody signed up for it, you know? All the countries of the world signed up for it, but obviously that's not happening.
Our friend Triple F, his popularity is waning. Poor Triple F getting put on the grill there. Listen up here.
Specifically, can we expect those jet receipts? We've asked both of you several times.
Well,
you say they're coming. When are they coming?
Yeah, well, again, you focus on that. We did a clean, give back to Bombardier, if you want to call it that. And anything that is extra, or maybe there's nothing extra, we'll make it transparent.
Well, when though?
Again, we will make it transparent as they get the transfer done. We will get it done. So don't worry. I promise you, Richard, I will be the first to call you. Because when you wake up in the morning, you think of it and go to sleep, I'll make sure I contact you.
You promised Ontarians. You did promise Ontarians.
Guys, we're focused on one thing, okay? People are concerned about affordability. They're concerned about jobs. That's what we're focused on because we know the foundation of everything comes to our economy.
They're also concerned about how their taxpayer dollars are being spent. So what's the holdup? Why not release?
They are concerned about making sure they have a secure job, making sure we give them affordability by giving them the tax cuts. The 375,000 small businesses, we're concerned about reducing their taxes by 30% to create more jobs, more opportunities. We're working very, very hard to be competitive around the world, and we're doing it. That's what we're doing.
Premier, you have the power to put this issue to rest by simply releasing, at the stroke of a pen, you can release anything in this government.
Yeah,
why wouldn't
that's
you just release those documents right away?
You know something, Colin? We're focusing on the economy. That's what we're doing.
I appreciate
and we're gonna
that.
and we're gonna get and we're gonna
do two things.
We are gonna get that out to you, and then we'll deal with the next issue. And the next one, but I'm going to focus on one issue. One issue that matters more than anything are jobs for people and the economy and making sure that we lower costs off the backs of people. And that's what we're doing. No matter if it's a 10.7, no matter if it's a 10.7 cents a liter of gas, or reducing the tolls, or getting rid of the tolls on the 407, saving people $7,500, or the one fare that we're saving riders $1,700. These are the things that matter to the people, and we're going to make sure that we get this done and continue being the economic engine of Canada. As a federal counterpart, high-ranking minister said, you're driving the economy in Canada. That's what we're focused on, but we'll get back to you on the other. Thanks, everyone.
Imagine if Carney had got that treatment from reporters. How different would our perspective, the national perspective, be of Mark Carney if reporters could find a spine when they're in the presence of the great Mark Carney?
They'd never do that. But Doug's best before date is starting to look expired because they're going at him because he usually gets it pretty good. And you heard his little handler there as well. That's it. Last question.
Yeah.
Again, democracy. Trump would stand there and answer those questions. He wouldn't care because he knows what he says and he just believes in what he's doing. Flippy there is a populist. And he's always out there trying to make, like he's there when it's, like to his benefit. But he stepped in a mud pie. All he's got to do is show the numbers. Doug?
That's right, though. I do think he has populist inclinations, like Trump. But he's not as good as Trump at doing it. He can't do it as well. Trump has like we've said before, Trump is the ultimate populist. Or that term is kind of meaningless, but he's in many ways he's the ultimate politician because he can literally manufacture reality, his own reality. That's how good he is at narrative engineering or influence or whatever. Doug is all right at it, but you know, he's kind of like the tin pot version, isn't he? And he can't do it, and that he's on the back foot there. He looks weak, and he built his entire political brand on the idea that he was gonna be for the people, particularly when it came to like taxpayer money being wasted. And then he's done this, and he's opened himself up. But I have to say, I maintain my position on this. Like, I don't think it's a big deal. I think he's made it much worse by backing down and letting the story drag on. He should have just tried to sell it, as in the idea. He should have tried to persuade people. He should have said, look, this isn't for me. This is for Ontario. Everyone else has got them. It makes sense for me to have it. You know, like, he should have argued it, but I think because he backed off, and now he's got this problem where he's not releasing the document, it just makes him look like, or not releasing the figures. It makes him look like, you know, it makes him look like a wounded animal, doesn't it? A wounded hippo.
We're going to move to this one on Trevor Halford. This the adoption by Canada of UNDRIP and DRIPA here, or the NDP's DRIPA, is actually opening up Canada to claims from other nations, other First Nations, from other nations. So now an Alaska tribal organization is using DRIPA to block the SK Creek mine that the Premier said would bring thousands of jobs to northwestern BC. Listen in to Trevor Halford here, the mess they've made with their ideologies.
Mr. Speaker, how bad has it gotten under this NDP government's recent decision to enter into co-governance and failure to address DRIPA? Well, now the SK Creek project that has, as the Premier says, potential to bring over thousands of jobs into northwest BC is facing court action, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Premier says that the mine is good for all British Columbians. He, in fact, brags about this project every time he's standing at a podium. But here's the problem, that while this government flip-flops on DRIPA, an Alaskan-based tribal organization is using the exact same legislation that this Premier brought in once in 2019 and then with the Interpretation Act in 2020 to stop the project. Can the AG confirm that the legislation to address DRIPA will be brought in this fall, yes or no? To the Attorney General, she says, and I quote, taking action. Well, when this government was ready to take action on what they were proposing regarding DRIPA, they went and hid because it was the Attorney General that tapped the Premier on the shoulder and said, whoa, 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 hold on, we can't do this. Let's delay this months and months and months and enter into a system of co-governance. Mr. Speaker, we now know that U.S. tribes have filed an unknown number of legal cases against the province and are now using DRIPA to hold back BC's economy. The Attorney General favors, and I quote, a durable solution, end quote. Yet, all these discussions that now apparently reflect a co-governance model, of course, according to First Nations leadership, are behind closed doors. To the Attorney General, will the province also be negotiating with American tribes over the coming months to find, and I quote, a durable solution?
Well, we got a new Governor General who loves the UN, so, and then this UNDRIP. So we turning Canada over to the globalists to determine maybe the UN can make the decision for Canada.
Does David Eby consider these people to be traitors? The people who are facilitating American involvement in Canadian sovereignty, you know? How he was very upset about that when Albertans went to speak to the American government. Is this treason, David?
What a mess. The latest poll, though, from Angus Reid showing the NDP getting a whooping, like a whooping, and they don't even have a leader yet. And it's starting to look a lot like an NDP wipeout. And they can play that old song from the Beach Boys. Well, a wipeout. Too bad we couldn't play the music in here, because we would play Wipeout here. And this is, again, failure of ideology. But do they have a Mark Carney waiting in the wings to scrub it? We said in our predictions 2026 that David Eby does not survive the year, that his party will replace him. And at some point, they're going to call his leadership into question here, because the party itself is going to start worrying about their seats, because that's what they do. they will start, just like when we watched the Liberals under Justin Trudeau. Anita Nan resigned, Sean Fraser resigned, and Pascal St. Onge resigned. How many others resigned? And some of them came back. Anita Nan came back. Sean Fraser came back. But you're going to start to see this here with the NDP. I believe we're going to get an election here shortly. But David Eby does not survive. I think they're going to put a different leader up when they run. I think his best before date as well is way past the stale date. And if you open that chicken up on the counter, that's 2 weeks past due. It's not pretty. It ain't pretty.
Yeah, and it ain't pretty in brackets. That's a good. We should plug that interview that we did.
Yeah, we did that interview yesterday.
Yeah.
Richard, I'll let you plug it because I'll give my voice a rest while you plug away.
Yeah, Richard Diaz, financial advisor and all-around good lad, had a very good conversation about Canada's economic situation. Well worth it. Well worth your time. But I just want to comment on this. Well, it was worth our time anyway, I'd say. So I think it will be worth your time. But on this Angus Reid poll, amazingly, you got to hear Mark Nixon listing all just a few of the sort of crises on fire in British Columbia: the downgrades, deficit spending, and DRIPA. There's so much more to it than that. Like healthcare, obviously, is another one.
Crime and safety.
Public safety.
Surrey calling
business.
it a national emergency for crime. BC ports is one big
capital
leak.
fleeing.
What's that?
The capital fleeing, jobs fleeing, people fleeing, even people going to Alberta and elsewhere.
Well, how about
so many crises?
How about the school system? We did another story today. How many teachers involved in sexual exploitation of students in British Columbia? What do we do? A story once a month? Sexual exploitation of students here in British Columbia. And some of them, this sexual exploitation, and they get 2 days, 3 days suspension is absolutely ridiculous. This latest one was students went to the teacher's house and drinking vodka. Why wouldn't you drink vodka with your teacher's grade 11 students? Hey, who doesn't do that?
They teach. It's crazy. Underage as well. Underage drinking, obviously.
Hey, and the teach had a shot too.
Yeah. It's nuts. And that's just
inviting students.
There's also the power, electricity generation, the electricity deficit, and all that. Like, there are so many problems in Canada, but in British Columbia, and yet you look at the other polls. So not just that Angus Reid poll, but you keep looking at other BC polls, and it's really not that bad for the NDP. It's see if I can find the right. So we have the Angus Reid one, which has the Conservatives 10 points ahead. The previous one was Main Street. That was NDP +5. Then Léger, NDP +4. Then the other Angus Reid one was Conservatives +2. It's still tight. And given what we've just discussed there, and even then what we've just discussed is just a little bit of what's going on in British Columbia. How is it possible that this party is still even in the ring? How are they even a contender? It's that in itself is just mad to me. I mean, you'd think if it was going to be a sensible political landscape, you would think they would be 25 points down, wouldn't you?
Well, we shall see. International stuff here. We got a little bit here. Price of oil is down a bit this morning, as they're talking about perhaps they have a deal. They've been doing some telephone diplomacy here, as Pakistan is trying to get them to hold off on the next big operation there.
Talk about messes.
There's talk that some of this is going to roll back here, but Marco Rubio, he doesn't have enough hats, so he's Caroline Elliott there, or sorry, Levitt, Caroline Elliott.
Yeah, that's a different person.
My brain fog.
Maybe they should swap jobs. Caroline Elliott and Caroline
Levitt there is on mat leave there. So Marco Rubio figured he didn't have enough jobs. So now he's the press secretary. I don't know for how long, but he's in there as press secretary. He's actually hilarious. This guy could rival Trump for hilarity. Let's go with Rubio. I'll see if you can find the right one and play the second one first and the first one last. You should be able to find it. It's pretty easy to find.
All right, can I? There's no way I can figure out who to call on. I'm just going to like press right in the middle, right there. You right there, yeah. Right in the back row.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll go to you next. I can't get everybody. You know that. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Secretary Rubio.
Keep going
right. Welcome to the White House.
What's
You're
that?
Talking to me, sir?
Yeah, to you, yes, sir.
Thank you. I have two questions on two separate issues that
Do
come
they
under...
get two questions for these?
Two questions.
There's a lot of people in here.
That fall under your umbrella.
All right, well, you answer. You can ask me two questions. I'll give you one answer. Go
Thank
ahead.
you very much. I appreciate
And I'll pick the one I like better.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The first has to do with the blockade. There are lawmakers from both parties who claim the blockade is an act of war. What do you say to that? And my second question has to do with the fuel embargo of Cuba. How long, Mr. Secretary, will that last?
Okay, two things. All right, good. I'll answer both your questions because I like the second one too. The first one on the blockade. And so why do we have a blockade? We have a blockade because they shut down the straits. So I don't know which members of Congress you're talking to, but here's what I would ask them. I would ask everybody here. It's very simple. These guys have shut down the Straits of Hormuz. This is what Iran is saying. We will shut down the straits. No one can go through. No country in the world can go through unless we allow you to go through, and you have to pay us. But our ships can go through, meaning the Iranian ships, as much as they want. That's crazy. Who would agree to that? So how are we going to have a situation where they get to close the straits to everybody, and the only people who are allowed to go through there 100% without paying anything are the Iranians? If you do that, they'll keep the straits closed forever. They're trying to make this some new normal. Okay, under no circumstances can we ever allow them to normalize the fact that they get to blow up commercial ships and put mines in the water. So the response to that is we're going to blockade your ships. If everyone's ships are not getting out, your ships are not getting out either. That's not an act of war. That's a defensive measure. It's a counter to what they have decided to do. You know what is an act of war? Putting mines in the water. Why don't the members of Congress, whoever it is complaining about it, they should be all over that. These guys put mines in the water. That alone, mining in the water is illegal, period, under any circumstances, and they've done it. This is crazy stuff, but this is what they've done. On Cuba, oil blockade on Cuba. There's no oil blockade on Cuba per se. Here's what's happening with Cuba, okay? Cuba used to get free oil from Venezuela. Used to give them a bunch of free oil. They would take like 60% of that oil and resell it for cash. It wouldn't even go to benefit the people. So the only blockade that's happened is the Cubans have decided, the Venezuelans have decided we're not giving you free oil anymore. And you can only imagine nowadays, the way oil prices are, no one's giving away free oil, much less to a failed regime. So the problem with Cuba is worse, okay?
Marco's got to be one of the most competent politicians of this era for sure. I mean, can Marco could probably out IQ the whole Liberal cabinet and still have room left over to still do his job. How's that? Marco could probably run all the cabinets in Canada better than all these cabinet ministers combined, because it's such the sheer level of incompetence that goes on here in Canada and the ideology. Because if you just got a straight shooter that just looked at the issue and had a solution, you could get through a lot of this really quickly. Like transparency and accountability would be the quick way. When Gary's in the committee, turn over the report. If it's such a good report, turn it over. Like, why would you block it? And unleash the beast. It's an easy answer. You don't have to negotiate with Alberta. Just say, do what you need to do. Build some pipelines. Put wealth in the pockets of Canadians. Put wealth in the pockets of the economy here in Canada. Simple stuff.
But still, it's not much of a compliment, is it? To say, I think he might be insulted by that. You say you could take every cabinet position in Canada and do it better than all those people. It's like,
to do his job still. He'd still have enough to do all the 10 jobs he has down there.
He'd done it like an afternoon, Thursday afternoon, to run in Canada, and he probably would do a better job. But like I say, that isn't really much of a compliment, because the people who are doing it right now are doing such a spectacularly bad job that, I'm pretty convinced that, as I've said a number of times, a random person off the street could do a better job. Never mind Marco Rubio.
Yeah, we won't play that first one actually anyway. Won't play that one either. Vivek, remember Vivek was running for the presidency, remember? Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he has some Canadian ties too, doesn't he, Vivek Ramaswamy? I'm pretty sure he does. Or is that just Chamath? But anyway, Vivek there. It looks like he's going to turn Ohio all red there in the gubernatorial primary there.
I know that
Well,
American dream exists.
Oh, we don't need to play it. No, we don't need to play Vivek. But and I put this one in
that's
here.
just the Republican primary, though.
Yeah,
That's,
just the gubernatorial primaries. Yeah, the Copenhagen's. This is crazy if this is true, but Mario doesn't usually. He's a pretty good guy when he puts this stuff up. Copenhagen's Greenlight Council is limiting elderly care residents to just 80 grams of beef a week for climate reasons, because they've already used up all their stuff, right? So they, the elderly don't get any more beef. They've eaten enough.
they've been the biggest climate sinners throughout their lives. Could that be any more on the nose? Could that be any more obvious that these people have they've searched out a proxy for religion? Just convert to Islam, convert to Christianity. Don't do this. We have these vessels, these ancient vessels and institutions that go back thousands of years. You can satisfy all your needs, all your spiritual, cosmological needs. Just convert to a real religion. Don't waste your time with this green bollocks. Could it be any more obvious that that's what they're looking for, these people?
Well, yeah, gather up your sticks, build yourself a nice podium, drag some of these old people up to it, and set them on fire in the town square. Tell the world how they've eaten too much beef. Why not?
God. I mean, this is the death or the sort of diminution of religion in Western societies has resulted in many things, but this is one of the most obvious. It's made people search around for a substitute, and the greenism is obviously, I think, the most in-your-face one.
I think here's Corey Morgan from the Western Standard. He says defund the CBC. Liberals test public support for cutting funding to the CBC. I can't see why anybody would want to continue to fund a propaganda machine. They already have one. It's called the PMO's office, and it's rightfully labeled as that, the Prime Minister's office. They don't need another state broadcaster, and they surely don't need CBTV and Global and CP and Canadian Press all acting in the same role. And in the media one, here's a little piece there for you. The Chicken Noodle Network founder, Ted Turner, has passed away. And Chicken Noodle Network was the beginning of cable news, right? The 24-hour news channel was the Chicken Noodle Network. I remember the Jessica McClure story was really the birth or the springboard for, the big stage for CNN when they stayed with that Jessica McClure. I don't know if you remember that, when that young girl was trapped. I think she was 4 or 5 years old, trapped in an abandoned oil pipe in Texas there. Do you remember that at all, Jessica McClure? When she was trapped in that pipe?
Yeah, I've read about it, but I can't remember any visuals.
I watched it, because they stayed with it. And they were the only, at that time, they were the cable network that stayed 24 hours on the story, where everybody else would just do it on their nightly updates and that. And it got a ton of people watching this drama unfold. And that was the birth of it. And they did a really good job for a long time. And in the Trump's first presidency, they all got deputized to be left-wing lunatics, and then they destroyed their network, and they've dropped in the ratings, and they're just like an activist group right now. And I mean, they turned what was probably one of the best news stations out there into an activist platform.
Yeah, it's shameful, isn't it, what happened to that? A pathetic shadow of its former self.
once mighty Chicken Noodle Network started as Chicken Noodle Network because the other stations used to make fun of it and called it the Chicken Noodle Network, and it went full circle and became the Chicken Noodle Network once again. Here's some stuff in the markets. It will take national resolve to grow Canada's oil exports. Suncor CEO, as producers, profits top $2 billion. So they're producing oil, even though they have like all this pressure on top of them. Just think what the beast could do if you took the shackles off, right? You know, the Hulk can move around a little bit, but you know, just take the shackles off. Take the shackles off. Take the shackles off there.
Not even a beast, quite a friendly creature, really.
No. Bringing wealth and riches to the Canadians. And also staving off starvation and famine for many people in the world. Bringing prosperity to the world.
Yeah. Well, created the world.
No. And then this one here, an op piece here in the Financial Post. Slow progress, energy. Risk letting this opportunity pass by. Because if the oil companies don't invest in Alberta, Venezuela hears the knock and the door is open. So is America. I mean, America is now one of the largest producers of energy. Well, it is the largest producer of energy. And we talked about it yesterday with Richard Diaz, and Ian had a good thing there. And it was the small operators there with the magic of fracking. Fracking again, Canada won't do fracking. Because they would rather ship oil from Australia or LNG from Australia and go over. We haven't used the globe in a while. They would rather ship energy from, it's always backwards, from that little country down there all the way around South America and then up to the East
through
Coast.
the most dangerous waterway. Elizabeth May must be pulling her hair out over that. And you know, off South America there, between the South Atlantic and South Pacific, extremely dangerous. Drake Passage or whatever they call it. Crazy, eh?
Comical.
And yeah, did you see the news? We didn't even talk about this. Did you see the news the other day that Equinor, Norway's state oil company, they're drilling, they're getting the drills out. Norway, which is a very, very social democratic, greeny sort of country, very lefty sort of country. They're going all in on it. And then Canada's like, it really is. It's only Canada. There's only one country on this planet that's mad enough to do what we do here.
This piece here by the Financial Post put out there, buying submarines instead of building may lead to another missed opportunity for Canada. Yeah, duh. And also using Canada Infrastructure Bank money to build ferries in China. Another duh. David Eby. Chrystia Freeland. Remember when they were just doing this? No, it was him. No, it's him. It was him. It was him. And we still don't have the documents on. We still don't know what the heck happened there. Over $1 billion loaned to build these ferries in China. And no assurances that there won't be spy software in them either when they question in committee. Here's the big thing, and this is, we talked about this yesterday. Even the TSX has lost its luster. Wall Street banks are getting ready to raise billions of dollars taking data center companies public. Data centers are the big thing. We have Larry Fink at the top of the show there telling you what the most important things are. Chips, energy, chips, energy, and compute, right? Like all that is so important right now. And a lot of these data centers are being built where? United States of America. We had a really good interview on, if you get a chance, if you haven't watched it, Douglas Carswell, a former UK MP, was on. He was also there when Mark Carney was Bank of England governor. Had some good commentary on that, as well as he was a floor crosser and called the by-election right away because he said it would be dishonest not to. But he also lives in Mississippi, which used to be Mississippi and Alabama used to be the bottom of the United States, the states down there for, their GDP per capita. Well, Elon Musk is spending $20 billion in Mississippi alone for a data center. And I mean, there's such opportunities. He said Mississippi is booming, and he's got lots of friends in the UK saying, how do I get to Mississippi? He said a hedge fund manager in the UK, which is like a pretty prestigious guy, right? Like hedge fund manager in the UK. He said there's guys that own like landscape companies having a better quality of life in Mississippi than these hedge fund managers do in London. Think about that for a while.
And that's a place that a lot of Americans would sort of turn their noses up at. They're like, I wouldn't want to go to Mississippi. And yet it still offers that kind of lifestyle that puts supposed first world countries, like supposed like peers like Britain, to shame.
Well, I mean, he mentioned one story. He said in England, most of you don't have a car. I don't know. You can probably testify to that. You were there.
So not in London. I think he was talking about London. Yeah, people don't really have cars in London. It's not.
Don't have a car, but he said where he lives, everybody has a car in his family. I think he said there's 4 cars. Everybody has a car, and he said, well, obviously.
So you kind of need one in London. You don't need a car. That's the difference.
Well, you can't afford one either, but hey, because you can't afford to put anything in it.
Exactly. Well, there's also like congestion. You got to pay money just to drive in London, just for the privilege of being present in London behind the wheel. You have to pay money for that. So, yeah.
Here's Microsoft may shelve one of its industries. We talked about this a while back. Most ambitious clean energy targets and race to build data centers. Remember Bill Gates and Microsoft? He was like, if you talk about religion, Bill Gates would be the grand poobah.
He was like a prophet.
Or a pope. He might have been the second coming. Who knows what Bill Gates was? He had a lot of titles, him and Greta Thunberg there. Who was she, Joan of Arc?
Yeah, definitely. Or some kind of some leader in the Children's Crusade or something. Maybe that's what she was.
Here's another story. Cameco profits up 87% on uranium. This is Canada's time to shine, man. Like it is. Like the sun is shining, and it's harvest time. And then we look out in the fields, and we're just like, when do we harvest? I said, no, the Liberals didn't plant any seeds, but we do have all these billions of dollars invested in these green schemes. When do we harvest that? Oh, well, never. Those are.
I already did harvest it. It's right here.
A little bit for tech for everybody. Watt EV just ordered 370 Tesla semis. So I don't know if they'll be coming to Canada anytime soon, but you're going to start to see these Tesla semis start to roll off the line here.
Very cool.
And another company that the Liberals, especially Doug Ford, their Flippy, doesn't like to acknowledge is Starlink. And 37 airlines now have SpaceX's Starlink on their fleet. And one of them is none other than Air Canada. So if you don't like Elon Musk because he's a fascist, don't forget when you're on the plane there, don't use their internet because you'd be using a fascist's Wi-Fi. So don't use it. Don't you dare. I believe WestJet has it too. They're not in this list, but I believe WestJet has it. They just rolled it up very quietly. They're just like...
Yeah, they're on the list.
Are they on here? Oh, they are, WestJet.
Yeah.
But, again, if you're going to use it, if you're one of those ideologues there, just make sure you don't use it. Refuse it. Tell the people.
See, Aer Lingus is on the list here. Aer Lingus, in my opinion, the worst airline in the history of manned flight.
Well, I got a worse airline than that.
You never, ever fly with Aer Lingus.
I got to beat you on that.
Vile.
I got to beat you on that because the airline called the Hindenburg on this day in history on May 1936 shows you why you should not fly the Hindenburg. We got a little video actually on the really big show here. Let's watch. Can we play that clip there as the Hindenburg?
Filmed by Pathé News cameraman William Deek, and you're about to see the pictures he got when the ship exploded. Those aboard leaping for life from a flaming inferno. The actual crash of the Hindenburg. An airship destroyed in less than half a minute.
good. And that was hydrogen, obviously, and that's they really kind of like put a kibosh on hydrogen, like development of hydrogen. Although Justin Trudeau, they went all in on hydrogen when people asked for LNG. Japanese, the Germans, and the South Koreans. He said, there's no business case for that, but we'll sell you some hydrogen in the future. Hydrogen, not really working out for a lot of people. A lot of the automakers even tried to turn to hydrogen, including Toyota. There's no infrastructure for it. And it costs more energy to create hydrogen than you get out of it. So hydrogen, not really going anywhere.
Just a pipe dream, isn't it? Yeah.
1936 on this day, that was arguably the worst airline.
You know, the best way to describe hydrogen as a fuel source is actually to say there's no business case for it. That is like a very succinct, very clean, straight to the point, and accurate way to describe hydrogen. And yet our dear former leader, Justin Trudeau,
got mixed up.
Used those words to describe natural gas, which is like a gift from the heavens. A gift from the underworld.
Elon Musk was asked about hydrogen. Why not hydrogen? And he just laughed. That was his response.
No business case.
And then this one here, you're going to know a lot about. On May 6, 1994, the Eurotunnel, or the Channel, was commissioned here as France and England with Queen Elizabeth II and I haven't said his name for a while. Francois, President, isn't it Francois Mitterrand?
Yep, that's his name.
Tunnel 50 kilometers long and 38 kilometers of that running beneath the sea. I'm sure you've been on the channel.
I haven't actually. No,
Really?
I've only ever gone over the top on the water. I've never been through the tunnel. I mean, there's a number of times I wanted to, but because you can, from London, you can get on the train and you can go to Paris and Brussels and a few other places. A number of times I wanted to do it, but it's just so insanely expensive. It's just like stupid. You might as well just get a flight for a fraction of the cost.
It's amazing that Elon Musk's Boring Company hasn't done another one there, and just done like for Tesla's ripping across there. But it opened in 1994 and was one of the most important engineering projects in modern Europe. 50 kilometers long. And I know that the Russians have asked Elon Musk to consider building let's see if I can do this here. Where are my map? And you got to go the other way. You got to do this backwards. So right there in the Bering Strait and up top there, they've asked him to build a tunnel. Because I think it's only 30 kilometers or something.
But there's nothing going on there, though, is there? Whereas this connects
this is
a lot
actually
of
happening.
people.
It's the longest underwater tunnel in the world. And it consists of 3 tunnels, 2 main rail tunnels, 1 in each direction, and 1 smaller service tunnel. Only trains go through. I think you can put your car on the train, though, can't you? You can put your car on the train, isn't it?
I think so. I think there's some kind of option to do something like that. But I think usually when people drive to Europe, they get on the ferry. And it's just like, it's not too different from BC ferries, actually. You just drive your car on and then they take you over the water.
Yeah. So there you go. The channel.
But it is cool, isn't it? And I think the sad thing to contemplate with it is, can you imagine something like that being done now? It feels like we've just lost something. We've lost the ability to do these big projects.
Is anybody in
I don't just mean Britain. I mean like the Western world, it seems, or maybe the whole world.
Has anybody in the comments here been on the channel and share their experience here? Because we've got one last clip to play where, and this is our big salute to 2 prime ministers that we both met, and we hosted an event here in Kelowna, the Leadership Summit here in Kelowna, where we invited both Prime Minister Harper and Prime Minister Chrétien here, and they were both here together, and Ian got to interview them, and we got to spend some time with both of them. And yeah, it is time for a sausage roll break. But Stephen Harper, not known for a lot of his jokes, but he has one here. And he said that this is, I won't set it up. I'll let him do it here.
I have to tell you, Calgarians have seen worse. The first time Jean Chrétien went to the Calgary Stampede, he wore a fox hat. I was told that this is how it came about. Mr. Chrétien's scheduler came in and she asked him, Mr. Chrétien, are you going to be going to the Calgary Stampede? Mr. Chrétien answered, do you want me to go to Calgary? Where the fox at? So,
What's good about that? Nobody seemed to see that coming. Usually when a joke like that is being set up, like a few people laugh early, don't they? Because they know it's coming, but they didn't.
When he was
They
here,
weren't wise.
he was he liked jokes at his expense as well. He was grabbing people by the throat while he was here, doing his because when he was prime minister, he did his own security. He didn't have a cavalcade like they do now. He would grab the guy that pied him in the face. He'd grab the guy by the throat. When they broke into his kitchen there, he grabbed the guy. Tough guy.
Grab the guy.
I grabbed the guy by the throat.
Well, he's a character, isn't he? You don't really get people like that anymore. I can't. I mean, the closest thing to a character in Canadian politics now is probably either Elizabeth May or François-Philippe Champagne.
I think they're all characters, just not great characters.
Yeah, they're not good. Even those two, they're sort of like they're funny, but they're accidentally funny, aren't they? Jean Chrétien sometimes was funny on purpose.
There you go. That's our show. My voice is just about shot. So Harman Bangu was supposed to be at noon today, but he's said his throat's shot, so he's bailing. So I think we're going to get him the next day or the day after that. I'm going to rest my voice, drink a lot more honey and tea. Maybe I'll sing a couple of foreigner songs. See if I can get that Stevie Nicks thing going.
Foreigner? Was she in Foreigner?
Did I get that wrong?
She was in Fleetwood Mac.
Fleetwood Mac, that's right. That's because too much Advil. Brain fog. Fleetwood Mac, Stevie Nicks. There you go. Throat virus, something. But I think anyway. That's our show. And, we'd really appreciate it if you hit the like, subscribe, comment, and the regulars here all the time. That's great. If you get this out to more people will watch it, more people get the truth, more people start to push back, more knowledge you have, the more that we can push back on some of this nonsense that's taking place here in Canada. Because there's no way in a healthy democracy should we have a compromised media and all the committees compromised, everything compromised. And then they get at the podium and tell you how democracy is great in Canada and healthy. Just absolutely spitting in your face. That's it. That's the show. That's all we got. Anything else you want to say? Satan is running wild, someone said.
Tune in tomorrow. I'm looking here at some of the things that have been going on today, including something, once again, that we predicted. Canadian beef sector voices concerns over Mercosur, the deal with South America, Mercosur trade deal. Gee, who could have predicted that?
It's
tune in tomorrow.
Gargle some cobra chicken spit. What? Cobra chicken spit? Is that a real thing? Cobra chicken spit. Anyway, I'll look that up. And the climate religion people, I agree with you. Get your sticks together. And it's like an Amway convention. You get all your people together, get Stephen Guilbeault, Elizabeth May, Bill Gates, Greta Thunberg, and get your sticks together and roast each other. Because you've roasted our economy for long enough. So go do something else. Go do something like worthwhile. Contribute to society. Okay? Chicken spit, Canada Goose. There you go. Protect the beavers. That's it. That's our show. Thank you for watching Now Media.